กามะมะกาเสตังกาติยังมะมะยัตติกากินนุสันตระมาโนวราหุสุริยันปะมุญจักสิสันวิทัรูโปอาคัมมะกินนุพีโตวะติทักสีติสัตตทาเมทะเลมุทธาชีวันโตนะสุขังละเอพุทธคาถาพิคีโตหิโนเจมุญจยะสุริยันติกินนุสันตระมาโนวราหุจันทังปะมุญจสิสันวิทัรูโปอาคัมมะกินนุพีโตวะติทักสีติสัตตทาเมทะเลมุทธาชีวันโตนะสุขังละเอ
Well, if we have Matt here, I got worried. I was like, oh my god, like Dingbat is going to freak out because this is like Rahu chanting, right? It's not even, I can't even lie and say that it's like to Buddha. It's to Rahu, so it's the Rahu Katha. So I thought it's appropriate, obviously, eclipse day. I've been a little wild, so and we have Avi, of course, and so if either of you want to come up, I've seen Matt's requesting. Okay, Matt, you're gonna come up. We're not officially started yet, but we're going to, we're gonna start, but hopefully we're gonna wait and see. There we got Mookie. Okay, so Mookie, I was saying that I have the Rahu Kata playing in the background. It's the Pali version, kind of the esoteric Thai version. So I thought we'd play that in the background today instead of music. Simply because, like, I need the extra juice. And I think it's appropriate. It just is. Like, Eclipse God. It's an eclipse day. It's a Saturday. It's like a Saturn-Neptune conjunction. Like, in many ways, I have an episode with BD Salerno coming out on probably on Monday, if I can get my act together. But we talked about, she wrote a book on asteroids and sort of, well, not to spoil the title, but we'll say cosmic bodies, we'll say that. So, like, it's really about the asteroids, but I think in a more tantric way, you can actually start to think of the asteroids not only, so then we have solar, so we're not officially started, I haven't done anything, but we're just talking about asteroids and the Rahu Kata, which we are playing in the background as opposed to music solar. So I don't know if I need the extra Rahu energy, but we'll see how it goes. So I was saying about Neptune, there's a way you can think of it. Chokmah, Neptune, Ketu, they're very interrelated. There's something deeply interconnected about those three things. Now, are they all the same thing? No. But there's a very carnal ground element to Neptune. In fact, when you look at the rings, how it's very, it's not a very dense planet. It's really a gas giant. Well, interesting, that also fits with the Kabbalah of Chokmah. It's gray, white at its core, perhaps, but really gray because it takes on the ash or the aggregates of the space around it. And you say, well, how is that a gas giant, Jin, if it's taking on the aggregates of the space around it? Well, it does, actually, because it has rings. Neptune has hidden rings. And the rings are said to be the asteroids, actually. So you could say it's even perfect to say that the terminus of Ketu is really Chokmah. Because in many ways, Chokmah is what? It's the unmanifest wisdom. So it can be the multiplicity. This is something I often think about with solar, like not with solar, but in terms of like what he's thinking about, in terms of like how I can respond or defeat him at Kabbalah, which has become sort of my, not a Kabbalah, but the logic game that is Kabbalah. Like, it's not that I have a rivalry, it's just that I like to win. So there is an element where I like to look at it presents a logic game rather than taking offense, right? Like when you're talking about Odin, I think of him as emanating from Chokmah. That makes perfect sense to me. He's not dense. He's smoky. He has inherent relationship with Gabura. There's the Lurianic path right from Chokmah to Gavura. But one thing I think is interesting about that path is it's dialectical. Like all the paths are, but that one in particular. Because the fire has to go somewhere. I mean, not the fire, excuse me, the smoke has to go somewhere. So if you're going to say that Neptune or Chokmah may be the density, the Klipa, we can get into this, and I was thinking about this, like NASA Space Kabbalah. That's a real thing. Like they're really just talking about the Klipa, but they're talking about it in a way that's not necessarily clipolithic. They're kind of, I would say that they're priming you for a broader understanding of their system. Not necessarily Kabbalah as it is, but there's a tree inherent in the outer three, as I think we all agree on and make a case for when we hold these spaces. I know you guys thought I was going to go way off the rails and start talking about tantra, and I apologize, but and that may happen. That may happen. But let me just, so now we have Harun here, we have DeMorgan from the Weeb chat. So why don't we just officially start? So I'm Jin the Ninja. I host a show called Threshold Saints. I am an erstwhile and sometimes co-host, I'll say co-host of these spaces, which are the Grey Lodge, which is a book club, a group chat of magicians and occultists and just call them mystics in a broader scope. And we also read occult books. And we are currently, well, I assigned the Donald Michael Craig book, Modern Magic. So, because I think it's a really good primer that covers multiple angles, you could say, of ceremonial magic, sort of modern magic, but updated. It's not fixed. It's not like, oh, you have to read Agrippa, put on the robe, do a LARP. It's not quite that. It's yeah, there's a robe, there's implements, but it's pretty contained and it's pretty he teaches a lot that it's conceptual. It's not that I agree 100%, but I thought an interesting book for our first book of the new year. And I know I titled this Last Rites, but I thought, what is a better homage to like the last 3 months that have been very tumultuous for me personally, as anyone who's in the group chat knows, because well, I'm not. It's not because of this, but it happened that my co-host for the Tracy Twyman series, Zach, passed away, and then I got quote tweeted by Patrick King for murking my friend using black magic. So that was really a fun day. And so fuck that Naga for sure. And also, yeah, so that happened. And that was pretty much my worst fear when he passed away. Was that I was going to be blamed in some capacity, not blamed as in I did anything, but blamed because I'm, on the edge. We're on the edge of we're gray, right? So we are looking at left-hand path tax. And I am interested in the ideas. But I'm more interested in the ideas for my own, like I said, Kabbalistic resolution of the tree. I like to see where they went wrong. I like to see where I can challenge it. I like to see where if I do better. It's really an intellectual. This is why Hasidics are so neurotic, because there's a certain number. It takes 3 counter moves to correct one dialectical error in the tree. It's not always. I'm sure Matt knows another 10 other ways to think of it. Often my foil, but my best buddy at the same time. But this is an idea from Ramak that it requires 3 counter moves to correct a dialectical error on the tree. So I do think that there's interesting ideas in looking at the tree as it's not that the tree is flawed, but the thinking around it can be flawed, and it's okay because if you can prove it in a logic proof, which is just really thinking through the conceptual layers, making sure the light, this is something Matt and I also spoke about, and I think I even said this in the chat with him, that people get the Sephirah so wrong because they think of it as a density. Just like with the NASA Space Kabbalah. The planets are not the Sephira. The planets are the husk. The planets are the stone, rock, ice, gas aggregation. That's not bad. That's not inherently wrong. It's like, what do we take away from them? And they're even given the Greek god names. And I know that's probably most of you know that I am somewhat notorious for my dislike of using those paganistic, we'll call it, names. It's not that I think I don't have the secret Sanskrit code. I really don't. But I can see the power of naming. This is something from Shrivija. I know that Matt will obviously think of the tantric parallels, as he called me, the tantric master, but I am going to relate, obviously, a little Kabbalah and for solar as well. I think it makes sense, right? So, really, if I'm just going to reference that work, and what this is not an Anne of the daughter space, but I think it's an interesting idea because of who she is. So, as I made the case, she is Tripura Sundari. She is the goddess of Hod, or at Hod, or above Hod, or the star, who is supernal to Hod, you could think, or at least supernal to Mercury. At least supernal to Mercury. Or at the seventh density. I think that's a very interesting way to think of the wisdom consort. If you want to use the 7-layer system, right? Obviously, as Matt has pointed out, the Pardes system from Ramak posits a 5-layer system, with the central density being not dense. It is pristine, it's diamond thunder, it's negative space, but it's not negative, it's kind of like infinite compassion in space, and it's the union of wisdom and method. It's like the face of God. He's always there, but like, how do you understand it? Like, what did you do to get there? I think that's an interesting way to start to look at the Klippa as well. If we're going to say the planets, the Nassau Space Kabbalah, those are Klippolithic. Okay, so you're encountering the Klippa right away through learning the space system. Like as a kid, first thing, you're learning the planetary names in their lower quality name, right? Because Tripura Sundari, I'm sorry I didn't finish that thought. Tripura Sundari is the goddess of what? She's the goddess of naming and calling, but she's also the goddess of the word. Now I'm saying goddess, but as you all know, I am Buddhist, but a tantric, but a Buddhist. So I'm saying goddess, but I'm referring to something a little different. But we'll use the Shrivija system because I think it just keeps it a little tighter. So she is the goddess of names. It's kind of what Hod, the function of Hod and Mercury. It's the power of naming. It's the power of the sort of the thing that you call forth into reality, and you say, "This is what it is," and through its name, I understand. Oh, well, you think you understand it. That's sort of the trick of Hod as well. You kind of have to play with it. That's another thing. So we spoke a lot in the chat about this. Like, there's this idea of the Bala, the girl who plays, or the daughter who plays. So I think that the idea of playing, of names, is interesting because then we can approach something like Klippolithic Space Kabbalah from NASA, and we can say, okay, if we play with it, we actually can break the Klippas simply by understanding where they're dense and where it's negative. It's interesting. You can also kind of understand their system, I think, in a more broader way. Because you're seeing how they're traveling or how they understand the Sephira. Because even though, like, there is a general experience of them, when you're going through a magical experience, yes. When you're traveling the tree, is there a quote unquote universal experience? Yes. To a degree, there is. To a degree, it transcends systems. To a degree, it transcends consciousness. But, and this is something that I struggle with, the further you get away from your highest experience, the further away it seems. It becomes more memorialized in your mind. So the less you feel close, if you've gone all the way together, that's fine. Good for you. But there's that feeling of infinite love, but it's exactly like the love that I talk about. It's love without conception. It's love without preconception. It's love without desire. It's something else, something different. That's what sort of differentiates Chokmah from Kether. And I was reading, even as is our tradition for the Grey Lodge, the Dion Fortune's Mystical Kabbalah, which is a great book, on the last two spheres, which I never did last year. So I thought, well, why don't we tackle them a little bit? Dumavati is also the goddess of Ketu. She's also the goddess of that. She's not of Ketu, excuse me. She is the goddess who eats Ketu, swallows the smoke, right? She's the smoke eating crow face. So what is Ketu? Ketu is like that Lurianic path. He is the smoke of potential, and then the disaggregation into ash, very carnal ground. And like I said, that path is dialectical. So the ash has to be sort of redeposited in the cosmic cycle, you could think of it, and sort of broken down. And we talked a lot about flux in one of our spaces, like a lot about how this idea of like burning frankincense or using tree gums for welding materials is the idea, is that's what flux is. It's very metallurgical. So flux can never actually be totally destroyed. There's something in flux, or even in the ash of flux, that can actually, there's like a salt, you could say, like a kind of primordial salt maybe. And so it can be reconstituted. So this is obviously an interesting idea if we're talking about Odin or just like the influence of Gevurah and Hokmah together. But they're resolved at Hesed, or not Hesed, excuse me, not Hesed, Yesod. Well, that's really interesting. Well, the fire of Gevurah is at least resolved at or rectified at Yesod. And that in Buddhism is where the blood ocean would be, where the Upasaka, the sage, that's where they stand, right? On the foundation, on the throne of foundation. The throne of foundation is also a gateway. This idea really struck me when I was doing the series with Robbie Marks about the Hecalot versus Merkaba mysticism. Strikes me in particular about the Twin Towers, obviously, since the towers originally had Sufi inscriptions of the surahs in the windows written in gold. It's very Merkaba, right? That is what a Merkaba is. It's the everybody gets this wrong, and everybody knows that I do not subscribe to the black cube of Saturn ideology, because the black cube, yes, Saturn brings things into density, but Saturn isn't even associated with that stone, really. If you really want to know the tantric secret, and I've talked about this many times, it's really a Rahu Ketu. That onyx, that's really a dragon stone. So, anyways, neither here nor there, but yes, Saturn does bring them into density. So you have this kind of black dragon stone that, interestingly, Ketu is usually, obviously, this is a sort of, I guess, an unusual eclipse in some ways, but Ketu is usually the one who swallows what? The sun. Very Tiferetic, right? It's very much Merkaba. The black and the gold, that path between Tiferet and Binah is what? Gold. Interesting. Think there's no black light that comes through? There is. That's what Binah is. It's not black. It's very dark blue, but there is an element of dark purple. That also happens at Tiferet. If you look at some of the Jewish letter mysticism for Tiferet, the letter is purple. So where does that come from? It's interesting. I know also some say it comes from Hesed, and yes, there's an element of purple at Hesed, but I would also argue that it comes from Binah, because sort of Hesed's tantric property, we could say, Green Tara, is she is looking at the primordial consort. She's looking at, if you want to call him, Vajra Bhairava. She's looking at Shiva, at Dath. He is also looking back at her. He is also seeing her and perceiving her and who she is. And she is seeing him and perceiving him for who he is. That's what kind of makes her the Uma of the cycle. It goes back to the question that William posed in the chat. Like, what is the true role of Hesed? He is to make things move. Well, I'm saying he, but it is to make things move in progress forward, right? It's the wheel turning rightward, at least from the vantage point of the outer temple. So I think that, unlike perhaps the Hasidic Kabbalists who came later, and unlike the left-hand path, you could say, or Lurianic sort of ideas that really arose in Islam with the Al-Bayani Kabbalah and their preference to Gevura. Heavy preference. I'm not just saying like, it's not just like, we just like a sphere. Like I have preferences, I have spheres I like, everybody does. Well, it's not that you like them, it's that there are certain ones that are less dense for you. And that they're easier to travel because you've lived your life in a particular way. You're good at this kind of magic. You're good at this kind of conceptual thinking. So those ones will just come easier to you. It's just the way it is. And as we say, like, your life is your greatest ritual. So obviously, like, I'm good at Hode. I think everybody kind of knows this. I'm like, especially lately, I've been very chaotic. But I mean, I'm not like out in the wild, like running around nude or anything, but like, yeah, I'm just, I'm having a moment. But I also think like I am actually good at several of the more stable spheres. So, but that's interesting about Hokmah, because when you read the Dion Fortune book, she's talking about like there's a kind of dynamism that's very Dumavati. That's very the wisdom goddess who I would say is there. She's singular. She's Lambodharaya. She's sunken. She is the ultimate wisdom, the Mahavidya. She is the true Mahavidya of the whole 10 grouping. Simply because she has nothing to give. She has no materiality. No material boons can she give. She can only take away. She is only tamasic, only Vamacharian, only left-handed. But she's really not, when you understand, because what it is she has abandoned even the carnal ground itself. She turns her back even on the carnal ground, on all samsaric activity. I think that's a very Buddhist and very fair way to articulate it. And what many people don't know about Dumavati is that, yes, she does appear in multiple texts, multiple practices in Vajrayana. In fact, where our brother HD 25 is right now at Bodhinath, she is in fact enshrined in a Dakini shrine. There are many Dakini shrines, but there's inner Dakini shrines. One of the Dakini shrines has her as a crow-faced Dakini. This is very uncommon in modern Vajrayana. But she's a crow-faced Dakini with 4 arms, holding a Damaru, holding a Trishul, holding a skull cup, and I can't remember what her other implement is. I apologize. But probably a Vajra, but maybe not. Maybe a Kartika. Could be a skull blade. Could be like a cemetery knife, right? That would be very her. Anyway, she was that, at least in that sort of temple, that little area where those Dakinis are. Those Dakini statues are from the 7th and 8th century, so it could totally be possible that they are actually from earlier, and that Padmasambhava, who is said to have worshipped in that very same Dakini cave, also worship. But even if he didn't, there were many famous tantrikas that came after him to Bodhinath. And I just think it's interesting, because why does Dumavati conquer Ketu? I think this is really what this whole space is going to be about. In like its essence, maybe. Besides my stream of consciousness. Is that she could bestow anything, right? Because the Mahavidyas are just yoginis. They're really 64, 10 in number, really 10. And so they're also Mahavidyas, but they're also one. Ram. So we're there. There we go. So we really have like a lot of our group. If we had Shakti and Phoebes, and like a couple more, it would be almost a full lodge. But I'm sure people are listening. I know. Oh, I want to shout out Monty. Monty is, well, I won't. Well, anyways, yeah. Well, prayers up for Monty. He's like doing some exciting big boy adulting, and we support that. So I want him to succeed, and we wish him the fast transformation through the eclipse, through the smoke, and for all of us as well. I know I made a very melodramatic. De Morgan, you must just think I'm like nuts because you're not used to. This is pretty normal space for us. To be honest, it's just we do. Everybody kind of knows it's like a mixture of Kabbalah, it's a mixture of Tantra, it's a mixture of speculative, fictional ideas, and we're also going to talk about like a little contemporary politics and astrology. But then I do it in stream of consciousness, so then we always are self-referential back to either the group chat or. But I promise, it goes somewhere. I feel like I have a point. It's just sometimes I meander to get there. It just is many paths converging on the one. It's very Chokmah in a way. So Chokmah, Ketu, Neptune. Interesting, because Rahu is the materiality, not the density. He's not Saturnian in any way. Every tantrika, really real tantrika, if you know tantric astrology to any moderate degree, I can tell you right now, there is no prana, there is no tantra that says Kali can influence Rahu. Does not exist. Why? Because if you want to look at the tree, think of a big black dragon wrapped around the spheres. Where does his head get cut off? Where is his tail sitting? Well, his head gets cut off at Kether. Just look at the iconography. Chinnamastika, the headless one. Well, she's not really the headless one. She is the one who is victorious over herself. That's the way I prefer to speak, so that's how I'm going to speak. And then you also have Dhumavati at Chokmah, so it makes perfect sense. She also is white, but she's also gray. She's also silverine, so you have an element of silver there. But you also have a spectral element because it is also vapor, as in water vapor, as in the higher ocean. The ocean that is interstitial, the ocean that is before creation, that is unmanifest, that is outside of time, completely outside. Kali is the destruction of time. So think of it, the black and the white, even though I'm saying it's not really black. It's really a soft blue silver. That's really the color of Chokmah. Very soft. But it can also be multicolored. And Dion Fortune describes it as tinsel. That's not wrong. If you've ever seen silver tinsel, there is an element to that when you are up there. There just is. The way the light flashes is very particular. Now, you may say, oh, that's cheesy. Tinsel's very 70s. Think of the 70s aesthetic. There's no better decade to encapsulate the psychedelic slash magical slash kabbalistic experience, because all of those colors and sort of formulations, even in consumer products, I would argue have a kabbalistic element. You have a lot of polyester metallics. That's very unusual. I know both the boys, especially Matt and Solar, both know this. The kind of metallic flashing, that's extremely kabbalistic. That's like one of the more inner things. That's when you're getting a little deeper. Then it starts to talk about things like that. So you can tell that. You might just say, oh, Jin, you're just over attributing because they just enjoyed horrible fabric. But I think that the truth is it was totally intentional, and I think the colors are the way they are, like orange and purple. It's like extremely yesodic, like those two colors together specifically. It's not that they inherently are at the pristine state of what Yesod is, but there is an element of being like very purple, very in your feelings, right? Very in your lower desire, especially. and then drawing from mercury, but not necessarily the higher quality quicksilver, kind of like Sailor Mercury, like, mercury bubbles, like that kind of turquoise, very much more pristine kind of lightning. Yes, it's still dangerous. There we go, Joshua the Branch, who has quickly become third Kabbalah master. Well, no, because it's me. I'm number one, so obviously. And as you all know, I like to think of myself. But definitely one of definitely one of us. So welcome, Joshua, and we loved your episode on my show, Threshold Saints. It was a really good episode. It really was. I know we recorded it a million years ago, but if you believe it, I've actually recorded with everyone a million years ago. Just kind of playing out the archive, and it's been interesting and fun, I would say, to sort of give people an order of how like the episodes are going to come out, just in relation to the art, the colors, the Kabbalah. Yes, I do think about those things. As everyone does, I can assure you, every single one does. Every single one does. I just watched myself or listened to myself on one, and I realized, like, yeah, I was like, yeah, like, yeah, Juan, like, I can, yeah, we have conversations about like you doing this and cutting like magic numbers, and like, yeah, I do that too, and yeah, I mean, you try. It's an imperfect science, right? And like, I am kind of chaotic, so that also lends itself to chaos on the cutting room floor, we could say. But I just want to say that they all do it. Every single one, every single podcaster, they are doing magic numbers. They are doing backing tracks. I just do it more obviously. Like if I'm going to play binaural, if I'm going to play like a cool breakcore and run it through sampler. Yes, Matt, please go ahead.
Hey, yo. I just want to quick say something. I was in a concert. It was Monday, yeah, and I was curious because it's pretty obvious that like big names in music use astrology, numerology, all this kind of stuff, Kabbalah, and so on and so on. But it was like a smaller concert, right? The band that I was talking to, and I asked the guy if they happen to know like bands, like if they themselves used, if they know other bands, like smaller bands that used. And the guy went, "Oh yeah, sure. Like our lawyer has this strict rule that we shouldn't sign things or Mercury retrograde." And I did this sometime, and I lost a lot of money. And I went out of there like laughing my ass off, because then you come back to real life and people are gonna be like, "Oh, but this kind of stuff like astrology, whatever, is bullshit," and so on and so on. And you go to real life, people are just using this all the time, everywhere, and making like huge amount of change in the world, right? So
Yes.
it's very interesting.
Yes. This is exactly right, Matt. Thank you for sharing that. I think that they are all using it. It's like the language of reality. That's really what it is. Whether it's Tantra, whether it's Kabbalah, whether it's ceremonial magic, whether it's chaos magic, I'm all fond of that. And whether it's left hand path, whether it's whatever it is, it's like they're all doing it at all times. It's never been more in your face. I just, I like Tulsi. I know this is going to make me sound like a total libtard, and I'm going to just own it. I like her. I kind of think she's badass, and I'm kind of like down with her, like, mother of Bana Krishna consciousness. Like, I'm just gonna say it. Like, like if I'm gonna cheer for someone in the sense of like, it's all a great Masonic game, right? But why? Why can't we pick people to move through it that we're watching? If we're gonna watch it anyway, might as well. But I just wanted to say about the point of her is that she is really good at wearing full colors. This is something that I think, I don't know, Matt, I want your perspective, and Solar, if you're able. I find modern Kabbalists, they either go too simplistic with the color system, or they go overly, where it's too muddled, too difficult. Maybe that's useful for them in sort of like, you could say, cipher of what they're doing. It's also maybe useful for them not to telegraph. Because color is not the only way. It's just that in politics, color is often the best way, and since men do wear a Masonic kind of outfit, which is obviously a 3-piece suit, or not 3-piece, but blade, at least a sport coat and a tie. That is very Masonic, because why? And Matt knows this already because I already talked to him about it. But each each side of your blazer, that's a pillar, and your tie is your kind of way in, your rod, your dynamic force. Again, very Chokmah. You are bringing the wisdom science into force. How are you saying? Are you bringing it into force? Because you are doing something with it. You are applying it with the flame of consciousness. That's what makes it dialectical between Geburah and Chokmah. Because you are taking of the unmanifest wisdom and you are applying it to reality and are conscious of its application. It's 3 things at the same time. That's how it has to work. Dath has to be present. Dath is present in every interaction with the Sephira, whether we acknowledge it or not. Because, like the carnal ground, as I always say, Shiva is sitting at Dath. But it's not Shiva as a god per se. But yes, you could also say that. But even in the Puranas, it's described he goes to the carnal ground. He no longer wants to partake in creation. He never really did. Creation was his wife's thing. While he is there, the hosts gather around him. Very similar to Gnostic, to Messianic Judaism, to the Enoch, like the books of Enoch. You guys know, I think some of you know that I did a series on that, and it really made me look at it like very differently. I was like, okay, I kind of get it. Like, God is gone, so it's like the same story, right? Metatron sort of takes his place, but in the Puranas, it's kind of different. Metatron is given sort of a new identity. I know we've talked about this many times, like the names of God. Like, what God do you pray to? As people may know, that I'm famous for saying, we don't pray to husks. I prefer not to pray to husks personally. I think that's do what you will. I'm a big fan of that. I'm not going to tell you or be a moral arbiter for anyone. I'm really not pristine enough to do that or stainless enough to do that. But my advice, maybe, is that look, I think you should use the system of the science of reality and the art of reality as much as possible. I think you should do it in a non-dual way. And I think that you should do it it doesn't need to be so subtle anymore, meaning that you don't need to go, as they used to call it in the 90s. Oh, I'm really aging myself. In the broom closet. You don't have to go hide in there. You get to be, you get to be free because everyone else is doing it too. And I think that's very Aeon of the Daughter, right? It's very, the wisdom is there. It's kind of superficial, sort of pink, right? Yeah, people understand. People know. People know what the fuck. Some people have a deep knowledge. Some people have secret knowledge. That's also very pink, right? There's a connection between that salmon fish, or that salmon colored ray, and at Tiferet, and if you're at Dath, you're seeing the salmon ray. That's kind of interesting to think about. If you're on the carnal ground, you are seeing both the gold and the pink light. Interesting. Those are both colors that can be at Kether. Not gold necessarily. I know I got in trouble for this. Not in trouble, but someone tried to school me. But really, I was right. I just didn't maybe articulate it in the best way. But Kether does have like a gold tinseling. It does around the edge. It's just not primary, but it's there. Like when you see light reflecting off water. That's especially moving water, especially clear water, especially like the ocean or Lake Baikal. Both of those places. But there's other places. There's that famous lake in Italy that I know Ramek went to. I know Lurius went to. Some kind of hermitage. So you can see that there's clear ideas from nature, but it's important to remember that they're non-phenomenological. Like when we're talking about the waters of Hesed or the flame of Gevurah, that is conceptual. You're talking about Yes, elemental, but it's more than that. You're sort of post elemental. That's what a lot of modern magicians get wrong, in my opinion. They focus too much on that square quadrant. But I think what's interesting is about mixing. Some people have accused me of syncretism. I don't really consider myself syncretic. I really think of it like Tantra, and then I try and think how I can explain it using Kabbalah. But at one point, you start to understand that both experiences correlate. So it becomes almost a code switch. Maybe my Kabbalah isn't fluent or as fluent as Solar would be, like better at Hebrew, and Matt is better at just the general kind of body of knowledge. But I'm fluent because I've had the experience. So I just relate it in maybe a little bit of a Droyan or crazy wisdom way, which I think is appropriate. I think that's appropriate for our space. We're kind of a gonzo space. And I was going to do some melodramatic rebranding. I know I threatened to leave, and I'm sorry for that. It wasn't, I was mad. And I wasn't mad at any of you, nor you, Solar. I was I've been in a good place with the show, interestingly enough. And thank you all for um, also listening to my episode with Joshua, but then also listening to my latest episode with Mario, and the feedback from that. Really appreciate that. It really does mean it's like meaningful. Like if I never got told that it was any good, or if other magicians didn't see what I wanted to do, or at least like have a vague contour of what I even meant. Because sometimes I'll re-listen to a show and I was like, what was I even thinking? Like, what was I thinking? Because I promise I'm coherent in life. It's sometimes you feel it and sometimes you're not. And sometimes I feel like that is a mistake for the magician, because, as I said, you want to grasp back at those experiences, but then that is the trap. Sometimes it's letting it live free. So sometimes I will oscillate between a more intellectual discussion of Kabbalah and how they relate, like the Sephira and how the paths relate. And sometimes I want to talk more about colors and the goddesses, and see where, and see where the discourse, the soup of the discourse, like what alchemy is in there, like what truths are going to arise for me that I can pull out, at least try and articulate an interesting way for you guys, and then. But I think I've struggled with that. I think I struggled with that with our fallen homie, Zach. And I think that it really I felt responsible, not for that, but for you guys. And like, was I leading you in a bad way? Not that I'm your leader. I'm not your leader, John. But I felt like maybe I was like, we read Red Book. Someone flipped out at us, said that, oh, that's going to make you crazy. Then we read, like, we read a few books that were like a little taboo, and then I did the Liber 49 thing, and just maybe I thought, okay, have I done something really bad? Because it's not really my intention to do anything bad or extremely transgressive, although I am in many ways a perfect Grey Lodge, a perfect kind of Grey Lodge archetype, because I do like it. I do like the chaos. I do like not chaos in personal life. And it's weird because I never used to have that. I used to not be in any group chats. That was when I first started my show. I was not really in anything. Didn't speak to people privately. Would never DM someone first. I just kind of used all my, I don't know, Chinese boy gumption, and like just cold DM'd people, called in favors from other podcasters, and trying to get people on. It's pretty much how I did it. And then I realized, like, you actually have to cold call You have to be on top of it. You have to invite people. You have to have a roster. You have to be recording at all times, even in slower periods. When you're not getting booked on other shows, then you have to be really focused on your show. And so what you're going to ask, like, what does this have to do with what you're saying, Chen? I felt like if I focused on my show, it would clarify what I needed to do in the Gray Lodge, because I actually love doing the book club and Kabbalah. Now, did I compress it, make it way too big, make it way too much for myself? Yes, I definitely did that, and then burnt out because I was ill in December, we'll say. And then Zach passed away, and then it was chaos. And then, but you know what? Legit, everyone here was a true homie, stuck by me, stayed in the chat, and saw the ups and downs of it. So you know me a lot better than a lot of people do. I'll say that, because I usually don't show that side, almost and never. That panicked, chaotic, wild person. Sometimes that comes out a little, but usually I'm quite contained. And maybe that's also the point of the Grey Lodge, is it can be a place where, like, Solar's good at this. He does his, like, it's kind of gray humor, Andy Kaufman. I don't know what even to call it. Graveyard humor, maybe. But I try and also take up that mantle, just by the way. I'm not Jewish and I'm not that funny, but, I try. I try in my own Cantonese comedic style. So Rom's actually quite funny too. Yes, please speak, Solar.
No, it's all good, and I'm sorry if I cut out. I'm rural, at all times. We got a storm coming through today. I just wanted to get something on deck. I wanted to circle back around to the sort of like Kabbalistic color coding and dress, but I don't want to necessarily take us back there now. I just want to like get it on the stack for like when you're ready to circle back.
Okay. Yes. There's our. I don't even want to call him a Zen bro anymore, but he is our Zen bro. He is our big bro. He helps me so much, and he's been a stalwart member. And so, shout out Solar. We appreciate you. He's also our Kabbalah bro. So, So, okay. Well, I think this is a good. We can definitely circle back. I think that the the way men dress is really important, but I think that because we've loosened, I can't believe we're going to talk about fashion. Like, it's not really my topic, but I think it's interesting to talk about because I think it's um, situational. So it's perfect for a magician to take advantage of. Yes, Solar.
Okay, so let me ask the direct question. So here's what I was
Okay.
thinking about it, right? I made the mistake of thinking about thinking about girls past, right? And I was thinking back to my college days at a certain unnamed Ivy League school, and the girl I was dating during most of that time used to wear that brand Vineyard Vines. I don't know if you know, you know. And their shtick, at least at the time, this is years ago at this point, was they would do these pinks and these vibrant greens, right? And so I always associated this brand very heavily with Netzach, right? But it was always against the backdrop of a slightly cooler, like slightly bluish white, um, like that. There was always kind of this counterbalance. And so for me, what I would see with this brand, and again, I hopefully people at least like have seen this. It's the whale brand. Like rich people in fancy places like to wear this and pretend they're not getting dressed up. Okay. So anyway, you have this sort of Netzach element with the pink ray, the green, and then it kind of skips up to Chokhmah, right? And so what I always found interesting is this brand, because of who wears it, it's an incredibly like Jupiterian brand, right? Like these are clothes that are worn by wealthy, powerful people and aspirationally wealthy and powerful people, right? But blue, or like the colors that I would inherently associate with chesed, are not actually present anywhere in the brand. But they're sort of implied just by the trajectory of
Mm-hmm,
the path that would pass
mm-hmm,
over it,
mm-hmm,
right? From
mm-hmm,
Netzach
mm-hmm,
to Chokhmah, right? And so I
mm-hmm.
guess this is kind of a way of framing this question is if you're trying to, let's say, emphasize one sphere in particular, is it better to, and again, just kind of an opinion, there doesn't have to be a clear binary
Totally.
answer here, but to just hit that sphere color wise, maybe at different levels of like absolute, bria, etc.,
Yes.
or go kind of around it or imply it through like by hitting maybe other spheres, right? In a way that you're sort of balancing and implying the sphere that you actually want to emphasize, even though you're not actually signaling it directly in the color. Like there's a lot of different kind of ways you can go about communicating this, right? And even just like
Yes.
signifying it to yourself and empowering yourself through it. I was just wondering, like, yeah.
Okay, so I feel this is an amazing question. So my first thought, I think there's like different ways to answer it, so I'm going to answer it at least two different ways. My first thought is that the people who wear that brand are Jupiterian inherently. They live Jupiterian lives. It's very like yacht culture, right? Nothing more Jupiter than that. Setting sail on the seas, and for adventure, and they're high honors and wealth. Classic Jupiter, hallmarks for magic, especially. So if they embody that, that's where they're positioned. Yes, it makes sense to access what? The complement to Hesed, which is Netzach. So you're totally right there. It's like to concretize your wealth. That's what Shukra does. That's what Venus does. Yes, sex, but it's a lot more than that. It's really where that fortune ray, that ray of fortune, that pink, but green, but pink ray comes from, in a way. So, and I also agree that very turquoise, that very light blue is Hokmah. So that makes perfect sense because you're drawing from the higher wisdom. You're kind of saying, yeah, I'm above you, I'm above everything, sort of above it. That's also very Hesed in a way, if you want to think of it, because why? Because Hesed is really clear. Yes, we use turquoise, like real turquoise, not like that Hokmah turquoise. And yes, sometimes people will use lapis. And both of those are valid. But the idea is that it's clear, right? It's Diamond Thunder. That's the ice. It's the ice at Lake Baikal. That's what Ramik was talking about. He's talking about that ice, that clarity that passes through. Yes, sometimes it looks green. Yes, sometimes it looks turquoise. Yes, sometimes it looks dark blue. But when you melt it, it's just ice. But ice also looks like a diamond. Diamond's like how I like to think of Netzach. It's my preferred sort of like icona. I guess everybody, I mean, it makes sense, right? Because Shukra's gemstone is a diamond. Shukra turns counterclockwise. Diamonds are forever. There's an eternalist kind of element to them. It's spinning. It's shining the light everywhere. Water is clear. Cut diamonds are clear. The vapor is also clear, but at the very top at Hokmah, but can't really. It's like it's misty or smoky, so it's a little harder to see around. That's also protective. I think that's something from Tantra that actually gives some insight into Hokmah, is that the smoke is considered protective. Not Ketu. Ketu's not protective. Rahu can be protective. Ketu is never protective. Ketu is only corrosive, only taketh away. So, but if you're at the higher density, if you're at the wisdom, we'll say the seventh density of the wisdom goddess, we're just using that, Matt, conceptually. I'm not saying it's the truth, but I mean, I think of it as the truth. But so if she's there, she's not corrosive, but you've already given up everything that you can possibly give. So there's nothing left. So that's kind of how she interacts with that smoke of Ketu. Okay, so yes, so they embody Hesed through their lives. They're magicians of Jupiter, priests of Jupiter, if you want to think of it like that. So then they wear the complementary Sephra, concretizing and sort of empowering, you could say, giving them the wisdom to maneuver over the people, over their enemies. Maybe not in analytical fashion, like not like Hode, but it may be spontaneous, maybe crazy wisdom, you could also say. Maybe very Droyon, maybe like it's a crazy wisdom to kind of navigate around people. Maybe this is also why that kind of class has, maybe some little darker things. Not everyone, but some people. And I think that also, so how I think the way politicians do it is better. If I'm being honest, like if I'm just giving you, I know you said I can give my opinion. So my opinion is I think actually the way most magicians do it, where you're a little more coded, like you're wearing the color, it's a little more obvious. You're a little less subtle. There's a inherent negative in that as well, is that people are going to know what the fuck you're trying to do. But the idea is that you can do layers. You can draw from the different sort of realms, the different colors of perception, and you can do it in a cogent way. But I think that my true opinion goes back to the tie, because the tie is just a standout for me. It just makes total sense. I'm not saying wear a tie. I'm just saying as a exemplar piece of men's fashion that is inherently Kabbalistic, that should be always Kabbalistic. I think that's the power move. I think the power move is to say, yes, I know what the fuck I'm doing. Now, this also has an inherent risk, is that you're not maybe going to go with the grain. If you are just a magician, like you're just like, okay, you say you're me. You're just a magician. You don't know what the fuck's really going on. Like, yeah, you kind of get it, but you're not like, I'm not a mason. I'm not, I'm not anything. So there's clearly a kind of symbolic pattern that they wear that is in subordination to each other. Even I can tell. I think Matt probably can tell. I probably think Solar can tell. And I think it does depend on the different densities, like where you're at in the colors, what colors you're drawing from, what layer of reality you're drawing from. But I think the tie just kind of cuts through it. It's the wand. Let's be real. It's the modern. It's the modern wand. So what I also noticed that Trump's been doing a lot of like blue and white at the same time, sort of like you could say a coiled serpent pattern. It's not really that, but yeah, you could say that symbolically, and also signals to the blue pillar. So I think it's interesting. And then he was with Mark Ruta. Mark Ruta is one of those people who's kind of always stuck at Benoit. And when I say that, I'm not even saying it pejoratively. I'm just saying that like there's a certain, and Macron does this too. You can tell that they're kind of magnetized there. And I'm not putting it down. Everyone likes Benoit. Everybody likes Saturn. I mean, if you know, you know, obviously. But all magicians like Saturn because it helps us bring things into manifestation. There's no materiality without it. But then there's also the kind of sage, we're just calling them sages. I don't think of them as sages. But there's a kind of sage or a magician that um, gets stuck, right? I think Matt is totally on board with us in that way. It's like you can totally get stuck. You can get yourself stuck by staying too long in the conceptual layers of a Sephira. That's why it's so good to be dynamic. Yes, Matt, please go ahead.
Yeah, just quickly chip in on that, because, like, for example, when you don't know about any of this stuff, right? About you don't know anything about Kabbalah, Tantra, whatever it is. Usually, you're gonna have, let's say, one or two sephirots in you, right? That you work the most. Let's say you have like Gibra and Netzah or whatever, and you treat those as two separate things. So everything that is Netzah, it's Netzah in your head, and everything that's Gibra, it's Gibra. You don't make the connection. Eventually, when you start to learn, let's say you get initiated into something, or you whatever, through any means, and you connect like Tiferet. Now you have a path, right? You have a path between them, and now you start to play around. But the problem is now, because you can play around, you can be like, oh, I really like those three, but there's more. You shouldn't get stuck into those three. Otherwise, again, there's like the energy, the lightning path uses all the sephiroths.
Yes.
So if you stop, let's say, working on one of them, like think about, let's say, the chakras, right? You can also use the sephiroths as a way to look into the chakras.
Yes.
Say you work a lot talking, you're the whole day talking, so you're using a lot your throat chakra. But then, because of this, you're not balancing out with the root or the sacral or the solar or whatever. You won't have the base. Like at some point, people like to talk about like aligning the chakras. But if one of them is like a Genki Dama, giant Genki Dama, and the other one is like a small pebble, how the fuck are you aligning them? You know, it's like the same as muscles. If you only train your biceps, you're gonna look weird as fuck because you have like giant biceps, but you don't have any other muscles, right? So you can definitely get like stuck into them, and because it's common. Like if you are good at it, right? Why wouldn't you? You want to use it all the time. But it's yeah, and also because the word nowadays usually guides you through being like a specialist, right? We are not like nowadays. You can do college just on one subject, and that's it. Before, if you wanted to become like a mason or whatever, you needed to know everything. You needed to know, mathematics, rhetoric, and astronomy, and like literally everything. So you had to learn all the stuff. So it's a very, very challenging.
So that's a great point. I think Matt basically laid it out. Like polymath maxing is the aeon of the daughter. So solar, you're perfectly aligned. Matt's perfectly aligned. I'm like halfway there. Um, I think all of you are. Rom definitely Joshua. Mookie, she's a mysterious woman of many interests. Avi as well, mysterious. Dakinis, you could say. So women have their own. Women have their own way of traveling the Sephira, of course. So it's a little easier for them. They're a little less dense than men. So I envy you sometimes. But no, we have our own power, Matt. I'm not like saying a feminist way. I'm saying we're better at the analytical. We're better at that analytical perception. We kind of give the names, even though I said it's a goddess, and it is a goddess. But we kind of give those names. So, or at least we decide on them. We speak them, at least in one way of thinking. So, we're just we can kind of call the densities for what they are. Women just kind of pass through them. Now, each has its benefit and its con, as I always say. It's always plus ultra, right, with me. And I think that's also goes to like what you were saying about lightning path. Like I prefer the lightning path. That's there's not a single person who's in our lodge who is surprised to hear that. I think that the tree is dynamism. I don't think it's chaos. I don't think it's clipolithic. I do agree that all those things from the klipa appear there. I think it's part of the densities of the Sephira already. That's what Ramek said. He said it's there. So you don't really need to name it. I think it would probably be better if it wasn't named. But I kind of understand, like now studying the Klipa a lot more, I kind of understand why it's conceptualized in that way. But it is kind of confusing and it is a little Cartesian because it's really just a lot of the antithesis. Sorry, it's like the aggregation. So you could figure it out from the tree of life like very easily. You just like say, okay, what is the negation of this? What is the negation of this? Okay, that's all it is. That's useful, of course. Excuse me. That's useful, of course, because then you can break klipas, as you know I'm fond of saying. And then you can also, maybe you need to brick up a little bit of that energy, Sometimes you have to. Sometimes the magician has to create where there is nothing. And so you can never really create from nothing. So you might as well make use of the aggregates that already exist. Yes, please, Joshua, go ahead.
Hey, you just I don't know why, but the way you described that right now, you said walls and aggregates, and I was just thinking like Trump is all about the wall, and it reminded me there's this tarot card. I can't remember which deck it is, but I think it showed bricks being made in the sun, but that occurs in like a certain time of the year when the sun's really intense, like in June. So Gemini has which Trump's a Gemini, and there's like this Gemini association with brick making, like you can make bricks from aggregate. And like the whole thing about brick making is so interesting to me. But anyway, that's not even what I wanted to talk about. You just kind of sparked that. There's a dress code at the Masonic Lodge, like you said, but I don't have to wear tuxedo or whatever. You just have to be in normal clothes, but you're not allowed to wear shorts. And so I almost always wear shorts because I overheat really easily as a fire sign. So I hate wearing jeans because I burn up. And so many times I've driven past and forgot that it was lodge night and see all the cars there. I'm like, oh shit, I'm wearing shorts, and I've even went in there before forgetting it and been turned away. So it's just funny because, you could come in there looking like a slob, but as long as you're not wearing shorts, they'll let you. But I just thought that was really funny. But the blue thing I wanted to also comment on, because Solar has that in his picture, right? That is
Yes.
tonight we have a full moon, right? So the color of the night sky on a full moon night is midnight blue. And so you're right, it's not black, it is blue, but that blue comes from the ultraviolet spectrum that's emanating into the black, and it adds like this morphogenic resonance of sorts. Like I don't even know how to describe it. It's like adding white to the black paint or whatever. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that because for me, that's the whole Twilight language kind of centers around that type of thing. Of course, the stars are more visible when the moon's not full, but still, there is that significance to the full moon night. And Passover with Christ occurred on a full moon night, Friday, like tonight, except a month from now. So that just felt like that was very, it was impressed upon me. So I had to mention that. Very profound, seeing how we just had an eclipse last night, especially.
That was amazing. Thank you, Joshua, for sharing that. I honestly had a lot of thoughts while you were speaking, and then now that you're not speaking, all of them have left my mind. And hey, Monty, we did shout you out. We did. I promised I would. I did. Right at the beginning of the space, we knew you were adulting, so we did a little Grey Lodge prayer for you. So fist bump for adulting. Good job. So I think that the shorts thing was really interesting because it does truncate you, cut you off, right? So it kind of makes sense in a Kabbalistic way why they wouldn't want you to wear shorts. I'm just saying I wear shorts. I do wear shorts. As you all know, I'm like a aging millennial hipster, so I wear shorts. And I'm not embarrassed about it. I'm also Southeast Asian, so maybe I can get away with it a little more. Rom understands. Rom, do you wear shorts? Probably not. But okay, so anyways, I do think it truncates you, but I think that like okay, so like the witches of the 60s and 70s, they love to be free. They love to, it's like all about sky clad, which is just from Tantra. I mean, that's just like it's one to one. The Digambara Jains. They weren't even nude. They would wear like little loincloths that were white. It's kind of interesting. Kind of like a mask, actually, like those masks that some of us, I didn't. It was some people wore for a while. They actually wore these little loincloths. So that's where that word skyclad comes from, is from the Digambara Jains. Yes, please, Joshua, go ahead and save me from my own tangent.
No, dude, that's perfect because you reminded me. We wear it doesn't matter what else you're wearing, everybody's wearing the white apron. And when you said loincloth, it reminded me. I was like, oh, how could I forget the lambskin? And it's specifically described as a lambskin, although when we're wearing it in lodge, now you get a lambskin apron when you are raised to your third degree, but what you wear in the lodge is actually a cotton or linen apron. But anyway, you reminded me too of something about the shorts. So in one of the rituals, you're actually wearing pants, but missing one of the legs. So it's like from the knee down on one of the legs, you're barefoot. and don't have any pants on that, bottom part. So then on the other, you're you have pants and half a shoe, right? So anyway, I just wanted to share that because you reminded me of the ritual.
No, I mean, it makes perfect sense. You have to think of everything as Kabbalistic. I mean, Matt's going to be better at this part than me, or Solar even, but it's just the reality is like your feet are hoed in Netzach, so the fact that they're exposed is already significant. Then the fact that your pants are rolled up to your knee, that you're like truncated at one knee. I know Matt's system doesn't use I know you're quite a fan of the hangman, Joshua, but Matt's system doesn't use the hangman. Where I would say it would go, but I don't disagree with Matt in any way. He's much better at tarot than me, but he puts a different card there. And I think that, but I think it still makes sense. I think it all makes sense, but I think that's where kind of your pants would be rolled up, but they can't really go further. Please go ahead, Joshua.
It's funny because it's been so long since I've done those rituals. I don't remember these things till you start talking about it. But you do have a cable toe on you as well. So the hanged man has a cable toe on his foot, though. And so and I was thinking about this the other day. Not only is that emblematic of the Odin ritual, yes, but it's also emblematic of being caught in a snare. And so it's almost contemplative of what desire led me to become ensnared.
Yeah.
How can I see the snares? And wisdom from Odin is like a thing then, like, oh, I can learn from the mistakes of others before me and not fall into this snare, and in the Bible there's a lot of times mentions of like snares, and it's
Yes,
of course to like our sinful behavior or demons, etc. So that snare element I think is present there. Now the cable toe is more of a nautical term, so it's not really this, but
okay, I'm going to make a point about this and about when you're done, so just remember it, so if I forget.
Oh, yeah. I did have one more final thing regarding the hanged man. So I can't remember which exact culture it is, but obviously it's probably something in the Levant region. But their lore concerning Orion was that is the fallen angel Shemyaza, who was the leader of the 200 angels that came down onto Mount Hermon at 33-degree parallel. And which, by the way, nobody's allowed to go to. It's like the Area 51 of Israel, or Sinai Peninsula, rather. Anyway, so they came down, made a pact, took wives, except Shemyaza's wife didn't want to marry him, but when she married him, she's like, well, I get a dowry gift, right? And he's like, yes. She's like, well, give me the true name of God. And he did, and she used it and went to heaven. And so he didn't even have a wife, but apparently. But then he in this story, now in some others, he wasn't repentant and ended up having children, etc. But in this particular story, he becomes repentant and wants to return to heaven, but he can only get halfway, and so he hangs in heaven. So the hanged man is Orion in that legend.
Well, it makes perfect sense, right, for Hode, because that's really what you're looking at if you're hanging from Kavura. You're looking at Hode backwards or downwards.
And it's Pisces too, zodiacally speaking, on the body. The snare would be on your foot, right?
And even
So,
that word in the Bible is that word is from the Greek is scandalon. Scandalon is borrowed from the Sanskrit into the Greek. It means snare or trap. Ram's probably going like, oh, Skanda, I know that name. Skanda, yes, the son of Shiva.
so is that what scandalous is really? How interesting. I love words.
He rebukes the father. So it is kind of scandalous. War rebukes the father, who is mind. But he's also not just mind. He rebukes the left hand of the father. So he said to cast the tantras into the supernal ocean, maybe the ocean of wisdom. Maybe you reference something there, Joshua, because you were talking about something that you said reminded me of Neptune. Very Neptunian. It's like very Chokmah and Gavura, like the whole time we're talking about this.
That
Like,
would be the waters above, the firmament. Yeah, man.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you put Neptune at Chokmah, it makes perfect sense. There's a kind of like, so in Tantra, it's described as this, and we've talked about this in the chat before, but Ketu, you could say it like how I've described it in the past on past spaces, is that Ketu hides in front of Mars. It's one way to think about it because they both inflame each other. They have a sort of mutually inflammatory relationship in astrology. Obviously, that makes sense, right? Like the fiery nature burns things, and then the smoke that's produced, but you could also think of it as sin. Sin is produced through the over application of heat. This is also makes perfect sense in a Kabbalistic way. It's always cautioned against. That's why like Ramak preferred Hesed and Hilarious preferred Gevra, and like it's been like a long dialectical war, you could say, for a long time because of that. I think that also bears out. But I think that there's a rectification, as we talked about with Chokmah, with Neptune, at where? Yesod. It's interesting. How can you get from there to there? Well, I think that there is if you go through Gevra. So that kind of makes sense. You're sending the flux away, at least the ashes of the flux, and you're sending the smoke of all the things that are burnt away. Then you have Binah, which is the total, we could say that the total materiality. It's like the longhouse of materialism, right? But it's not materialism as in like, I love materiality. It's just that, oh my God, it's so heavy. The gravity is like just, it's holding you. It's just like holding you down so deep. That's Binah. And Saturn, of course. So when you apply the fire to that, what happens? It burns. That's why there's a stopgap. Because you have to have it both. It's like kind of always in synthesis. It's like what Matt said. It's kind of like it's the dynamism. It's the really the Sephiros. You could even just have the tree with the paths. You don't really even need the Sephira because it's how the light travels through the paths. The Sephira, yes, for magic, yes, you want the Sephira because that's how you're going to sort of conceptualize things into the densities. But in terms of like magical experience, it's really just light traveling through the path. So you're kind of better off not getting fixated in them either. Okay, Matt, please go ahead.
Yeah, it's literally like that. The light is passing through the paths all the time, right? And the thing is, when you try to like stop the light at one of the sephiroths and you cannot contain it, then what happens is it breaks and you have the husk. So that's the problem. Like literally, you just gotta let the light pass. That's it. You know, just let the light go, and you can have the awareness of, oh, right, okay, it's on this effort right now, but like it shouldn't be the point of you to kind of hold the light there, because that's the thing. Like if you don't have the capacity, it's just gonna blow up the Sephiroth and become a husk, a Cliffa. So
Perfect.
It's like the metaphor that you're breaking what's holding it. So then it becomes the Cliffa. It becomes something like not what it was supposed to be, basically.
I mean, we've already been down that road before, right? We got a whole world of Tohu just sitting there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Joshua, please go ahead, and then we'll have Monty come on.
Is that what would be like too much of a good thing, or like breaking a dam, something like that, where it's an or maybe even like an inverse of something like when people, or maybe I think of like church clergy where they become discriminatory or prideful or whatever, and they put stumbling blocks in front of the people or whatever might be the case. If that is an example of this, where the separate breaks and becomes a klipa. Is that what you're describing?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I was
No, I should let Matt answer. I'm sorry, Matt.
I couldn't think of the words but thank you. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, no, it's definitely that. It either becomes something that's like not good now because nothing in excess will be good, or it's just like you become lost in the character. You know, it becomes too obvious now what you're doing. And imagine like you're playing a game, you're playing Street Fighter, and you're like doing the same attack every time. Now the game's gonna go back to like, yeah, this motherfucker is gonna play this again. I'm gonna throw another thing, and I'm gonna fuck him. You know, like, you gotta learn to use different ideas as well. Otherwise, that's it. At some point they don't work anymore. Basically, like either because you start to corrupt them, like you said, because let's say you become too prideful, or you become like you start to use like gluttony or whatever, like the sin, or that's it. Like it's just not gonna work anymore. You know, and then you start wondering, oh, why is my stuff not working? Because, well, you got to try something else. Also because the game evolves. Like imagine, like the Jin touched briefly on that, like the hangman being different on the system that I use. Is not so much that one is wrong or right, it's just that the system evolves, right? And then you can use still other systems. Like you can read books from the fucking 2,000 years ago, 3,000, 10,000. Sure, it's just that at some point you can also have different ways of understanding, and that's fine. You know, you play around with your point of view, really. But no system is gonna be better than the system you can build yourself. But for that, you gotta learn a bunch of systems. Like you're not becoming fucking Bruce Lee the first day you start to learn some martial art, right? You need to practice it and then start playing around with different ones.
Solar, please go.
Yeah, I was just gonna give like the most normie example ever, right? Like the one that you'll probably hear if you like walk into a Kabbalah, like a Hasidus like 101 class, right? Is it like the classic example of like doing like a mitzvah is always going to be like giving tzedakah, right? Because it's this sort of arbitrary thing that you can do and that sort of multiplied anyway, right? Tzedakah, charity, right? But like things will go very wrong very quickly if you begin to like become obsessed with doing like giving charity for the sake of giving charity, as opposed to giving charity for the sake of like loving kindness and ultimately for like rectifying the world and rectifying yourself and orienting yourself towards God, right?
Yeah, 100%.
You'll become not just like puffed up, you'll become macher and like all these things, but like it'll become this like pathological like psychological burden for you. It will become a stumbling block to you because you're obsessed with how much you give and how generous of a person you are and all that stuff, right? And just to like another example of when nothing exists for its own sake, it's always for the telos that you've set out, right? Whether that's you're a normie Jew and so it's loving kindness and bringing the light of divinity down into the material world, or something like you're, I don't know, or not sparring, but you're fighting, right? The objective is to knock the guy out or to win on technicality. The objective is not to throw the hardest punch you possibly can. And in fact, if you become obsessed with getting as much force as you possibly can behind your fist for your haymaker, you're going to be a really obvious and a really lousy fighter, right? So it's like one of those things that like, yeah, you need to hit with enough force to accomplish your goals, for your strikes to actually mean something when they land. But the goal is not throwing the hard punch, right? And the second you like lose sight of that, you're gonna fight like a retard.
100% well said. I want to let Monty come up. But that was really good, Solar. And I will say something after.
No, Solar, that was awesome. First off, I just wanted to say thank you, everybody in the call. Sorry I'm late, but already this has been a phenomenal conversation. But I actually had a question to piggyback off of what Solar was asking there. I'd love to get your take on the charity for charity's sake instead of like a relationship to God, and how like tax incentives for charity. How much does that go and like fuck up the imbalance? If I'm saying this wrong, please like tell me. But it's I just think that that's like a very like strange incentive.
Yeah, it's very clipolithic. That's the klipa. That would exactly be the
Okay.
klipa. That's the negate. That's like the negation of loving kindness.
Huh.
this is doubly easy to do in the Jewish context, and I know this is gonna sound like Grug brain, like what were they saying, Jin brain in the Dissident Right like a month ago.
Yeah,
But
drug
this is something that Hasids literally like take very literally, right? It's this idea that every penny that you give to charity will come back to you at least 1 for 1, and most likely with a multiplier, right? And I mean,
Prayers.
like, this is
Yeah.
a literal belief. And so you're like, okay, well, then how can you ever possibly give with pure intention if you literally believe that you're able to acquire an infinite amount of return by giving infinitely, right? So, like, that puts it to this test, what you're getting at right away, because not only are there maybe more straightforward incentives, yeah, like tax deductions that exist, but it is even just within the kind of like logic of Hasidic thought, it is like completely possible to give with ulterior motive just by giving at all. So yeah, it's put to the test like right away that it has to be done like with good intention and for good intention. But they take that issue like head on, I guess.
Okay, so Monty's giving me thumbs up. I'm going to let Joshua go because I know he's been waiting patiently. I just will say one thing about that is that, yeah, I totally agree with what Solar said. I also think this is what Luria said. He said that as soon as you apply Kabbalah to the bureaucracy, you are creating really dense klippas. He said that. He was a scathing critic of the bureaucracy. Yes, Mr. Left Hand Path Kabbalah himself. He did not like the bureaucracy. Interesting, right? Anyways, I'm sorry, Joshua, please go.
Oh, dude, don't be sorry at all, because in fact, what I was going to say related to Monty's question, anyhow. Um, yeah, there's a lot of stuff in the Bible about like it says not to like give charity and then go declare what you've done and tell people. That would be like breaking the separo in that way, right? And we're supposed to do things in secret that our left hand and right hand don't know what the other's doing. And so this whole conversation comes to mind with, all of that. And I just think it's so funny because the Bible has all this stuff in it. It's just so hidden. Um, and then, of course, there was another thing I was wanting to say. Oh, yeah. I think what's missing too, if like we're just doing like a tax deduction or donation or like donating to a nonprofit or whatever it might be. Yeah, I do think there's some alchemy involved. The money can come back. That is true. But also, I think that's if you're only looking at it materially. If you actually give in secret to like a friend or somebody that you've come across in need, like widows, orphans, single moms, things like that, and you help them, then with that tithing you've done, in that sense, you've developed a relationship also, and reduced suffering with that mitzvah. And so when you get repaid, you're not getting repaid with money. You're getting repaid with like being fruit that comes from leading that person to God, sharing the gospel with whatever it might be, etc., or the Torah. Anyway, I just wanted to make that point because we see that kind of story happen a lot in the Bible too, where people are saved out of dire situations or whatever because of somebody's mitzvah.
Thank you, Joshua, and please go ahead, Matt. I do have ideas, but I'll let you guys be impressive for me.
Yeah, just one quick thing, right? If you think about it, New Age style, we're all one. When you give money to others, you're giving money to yourself as well. It's just a point of view of yourself which needs more the money than the point of view you're controlling now needs. So if you want to understand it literally, then that's already you're getting back, right? Because you literally just gave it to yourself. The money didn't get out of you. It's just in a different character, let's say, that needs the thing more than you need right now. And definitely the not being so, like, not boasting about stuff. It's a very Netza thing. Like, just keep it to yourself. You don't need to boast about the stuff that you are gonna do and that you did and so on, because it literally doesn't help in anything, unless it's for the sake of getting, I don't know, feedback or something. But most of the times it isn't. It's just because like ego or whatever, right?
There's this funny idea where actually receiving tzedakah, sorry, I'll stop. Receiving charity is in some ways considered a greater mitzvah than actually giving the charity, because by putting yourself in a position to receive the charity, you are giving the person who will actually give the money or resources or whatever, you're giving them the opportunity to fulfill the mitzvah in joy, right? And so there's actually this kind of funny story. I find it touching anyway. It's very short, of these two guys who one is overwhelmed by love and joy and decides to give his friend like, let's say, $20. It just for like, I want to give this to you so you can do something with it. Then the other guy is so joyful and receives it, says, no, 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 I want to give it back to you. And they go in this like positive feedback loop of sort of overflowing generosity and joy. And it said that they together like climbed the ladder all the way up to experience like the height and fullness of simchas tzedakah, right? Of the sort of the love of God, just because they get sort of so caught up in giving joy to the other, right? Giving what they have and providing it to the other. It's sort of a silly story, but I don't know. It's one of those like core like Hasidic ideas, and the spirit of it, the overflowing joy of it, is very much like on brand, you know.
Great as always, Solar. Okay, Monty, please go.
Oh no, I just love what he said there. Solar. It's I just love that even Jews believe in Jacob's ladder. Uh, of that reciprocity of constantly climbing the ladder. I think it's incredible. Um, I do have one more question, if you guys don't mind.
Ask as many as you want.
Thank you. So, so I was someone had recently posted a Pepe that just like reminded me of this for some reason. But in Greek, the monad, and it being the supreme being and divinity, and also being like the single-celled organism that like makes up our universe. I kind of like I'd love to kind of get a like Kabbalistic approach to the monad or any kind of I don't know. I have like hesitations with it. I like don't necessarily buy a lot of the Greek stuff. So I would just I don't know. It's been taking up a lot of mental real estate for me. So yeah, excuse me.
I guess I'll go first, but I'll let all the boys speak, so I'll do it quickly. Is that for me, I like a dyad. The consort resolves all paradox. It makes sense in a Kabbalistic way. The Ruach, the Shakti, the wisdom consort, that's all one thing. It's not really different. I mean, even her name in many tantras is adamantine breath. It's just like prana paramita, like the perfection of wisdom. It's just like, what stage of consciousness does she come? Is she Lilith, or is she pristine? I think that's a very tantric way. That's not. I know that you asked more Kabbalistic way, but I think it also makes sense if you're thinking that she can climb the tree too. That's how I think of it. I know that's a little more. Well, they always Rom and Matt always accuse me of being like old fashioned in my thinking, but I think that's actually a little edgier way to think of it. Like that the Scarlet Woman can climb the tree too. That's a much more tantric way to look at it. Like the kind of boar-headed goddess, she comes up, she arises at Malkuth, she climbs through all the Sephiroth lightning path, slays the dragon, comes out at Kether, transforms into sound and light. I don't know. I think that's kind of mythopoetic. Joshua, please go ahead.
I'll be brief. In the Bible, we have a story of Joshua and Rahab, who was a prostitute. Um, he married her, and so you could say that's an example in that story of them climbing the ladder together. And then Christ and Mary Magdalene as well, because his name's Joshua or Yeshua as well. So that's a normal tradition with that story, I think.
I think Mary Magdalene is the daughter. I know I've posted about this. Some of you probably know this, so because I was talking about it last week. But I mean, not that any of you like know what I tweet about. I'm just saying that like, I just mean that like I have talked about it, but it's something I've been actually was like percolating in my mind, and I do think Mary Magdalene could be like the Christian theurgic identity. I don't know. It's something to think about. Obviously, other people think about it that too. There's like neo-Gnostic groups that do think that. It does make sense.
They would consider her the in some the Holy Grail in some cases. Yeah, like the Priory Scion. I think they consider that. And that ties into the noon blue apples and all that, by the way.
No, you're totally right, Joshua. It's like that's what it is. But like, if you so you just say that she's like the Gnostic Nuria. She's like the Nuria. The Nuria doesn't really have an identity. She can kind of like take different characters, just like the mother can take different characters, but the daughter's a little more fixed in her identity because she kind of knows what she doesn't want to do. And like Mary, what does Mary Magdalene hold in Catholicism? She holds the red egg of Passover, the cosmic egg, the alchemical egg, the philosopher's stone. How many densities does an egg have? Oh, 4. But there can also be more. But then she also can hold what? The ointment. She can hold the like it's the product of the alchemical marriage. It's the crystal vial.
Dude, it might represent her ovum.
That's also what it can be, because it's all 3 things at the same time always. Or 4.
That is wild. Yeah.
Right? That's because you have to do partas with the Bible. You have to understand it non-literally. It does, like Matt, I know Matt, and we should shout this out that Matt did like a legacy marathon podcast on this exact subject. And even I stole his line about partas, so he knows that I know that I stole it. So it's not like I stole it, without attribution. But I'm giving him attribution. But I did have talked about this before, but I usually talk about inner outer secret. You'll hear me say that sometimes, like the tantric dialectic. But really the inner outer secret, that's 3 layers. Each layer of reality or each layer of twilight meaning has an additional 3 layers. So inner outer, inner secret, etc. and so on. So, but like Matt and I have discussed, it's like, what is the terminus? Is 7 the terminus? 7's often the terminus. So that seems to be like a good sort of layer to put it at, but you could also say 5. It's like interesting about the chakra systems. In Tantra, we use 5 chakras. In more of the New Age and the Normie Yoga, they use 7. So I don't know. That's why I also like the dyad, because I think it resolves some of these paradoxes in metaphysics as well. You can think of things a little more balanced, a little more middle pillar, a little more non-dual. Yes, Matt, I'm sorry. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, don't need to attribute anything. Everything has already been discovered. we just keep repeating the same shit in thousands of years. But yeah. But anyways, on the monad and this kind of stuff, like basically the way I understand it is things, again, they evolve into each other, right? So if we go with the monad, it's just the one, right? You can say like it's Keter, it's the first emanation, but from it anything else can come, because you already have, it's already everything, right? So you need, if you want experience, you need to divide it inside, right? It never, like, it is already everything, so there's nothing more to be created, but you divide it inside, so you have the dyad. Then from it you can bring more stuff, so the Greek would go even to like the triad, the tetrad, and then you have the tetractys, right? You have the pyramid thing, and that's the thing. The way that I understand it is that the knowledge of it can just continue to evolve. Like, okay, we can stop at 5, we can stop at 7, we can then from the 7 say the monad. The Theosophians will get this word, right? It's gonna mean something different. So the monad would be the higher octave in this context, meaning the kind of the source from where your body is coming, like your body in Keter, basically, and then it has 7 bodies below it. So the body you have right now is the 7th, let's say, is the material one. So the monad would be the higher octave. After the 7 bodies, you have the monad, which the Theosophians will call monad, right? And then, but from coming back from the numerology thing, you can keep going, right? So, for example, if you go to the Mayans, they have 13 stuff. So it's already base 13 is already what the fuck? It's so many more numbers, right? and the thing is, you can keep going on those. And to me, it depends only on, like Jin was saying, what kind of systems you want to derive that from. Because, for example, if you go by sevens, then you can understand, for example, the way the cycles go in terms of like chronos times. So if you get the year and you divide it by 7, then you have like around 52 days. So you can see your cycles a lot differently than people which use the 9 numbers to go like numerology and see cycles, because the cycles are going to be totally different, right? You're going by 7s, they're going by 9s. Or if you had people doing less or more, whatever, right? But then again, it's up to you to adapt to the way that your point of view works, I guess, and the way that the local awareness of people is also working. Because say you get teletransported back to 2,000 years ago, but you have still the same knowledge, you wouldn't be able to do a lot of the stuff that you do just because the environment doesn't support you, right? So you also got to adapt to the environment, the stuff that you are trying to do, and that you can work with, basically. But I'd say
That was great, man.
Just to finish it off, like that's the thing. The monad, that it's everything already, so you cannot really work with it. It has to basically it has to put its energy into other things for it to become like the duad, the triad, and it keeps going, right?
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree with that. I know Solar's been waiting. Please go, Solar.
Yeah, no, it's really just a follow-on question to clarify, because I don't have a background in Platonism, right? I've done a little bit. I mean, I've read some Plato, obviously, like I'm a philosophy guy, and I've read like a little bit of Neoplatonic, like Plotinus and stuff, but it's not totally clear to me. Maybe you can clear this up, like where this sort of initial dynamism comes from, since the monad is already all-encompassing. Like in Tantra, we already have the kind of like matrix that allows for change with like the rigid sort of like fixed Shiva and his Shakti, right? And
Yes.
the sort of like natural attraction, however you want to say that, right? We already have like all of the ingredients, the possibility for motion, a cycle, things like that, right? For change. And in Kabbalah, we have this kind of like elaborate explanation for how God had to actually sort of withdraw himself from himself, right? From being this sort of like all-encompassing, I guess what you would call like the monad, right? Had to actually contain himself, to sort of crystallize himself, to localize himself, sort of metaphorically, maybe not like spatially, enough to create a space that then he could act on, right? And that's how we got to the sort of like first stage of creation, the shattered, first spheras that became the Klufot and all that stuff, right? So anyway, but the point is they had to sort of get around this problem of having an all-encompassing sort of monad situation, right? And get from that to a state of dynamism, right? And then of course, like in other like Indo like Aryan cosmologies, right? I'm familiar with the Germanic one. You come in guns blazing. You already have like multiple elements, right? You already have fire, you have ice, you have the void, Genenda Gap, right, where Muspelheim and Nusselheim, whatever, are coming towards each other. And then you just have giants coming out of sort of nowhere. Anyway, so you're already coming in with a highly differentiated kind of like cosmology, right? And I just don't know enough about the kind of Platonic conception to understand what allows for that kind of initial division of the monad, as Matt was saying, or something like that. So maybe you could clarify for the retards here, like kind of how they understood that. I don't know if you think that would be helpful or not.
No, I think it's incredibly insightful question, but I also think that you're incredibly smart. So when you say that, it puts a lot of pressure on me, Solar, to like give you a really good articulate answer. But because I know that you are worthy of it. So I personally think it's not really. I mean, yeah, if you okay, so I'm not a philosophy guy. I've said it many times. I don't know the Western tradition. I'm really bad at that stuff. It's not my stuff. I'm sorry. Uh, but I do think that the Aristotelian dialectic plays a large role in why there are later permutations in the monad, in particular, because it's really that XY axis of like the Gervanites of good and bad, day and night, time and space. That's 6, but obviously there's more. You could make more divisions, but those were the primary ones, right? So I think it has to do with that personally. And I think you can use the tree to map that out as well. And then that's how you can sort of say that the paths are fallen. And I think a lot of the sort of like heterodox Jewish texts, we won't call them Gnostic necessarily, but there definitely are some that are Gnostic that are more well, they explain the story from different perspectives, because that's what a lot of what Tantra even talks about, right? Is it's like about your view. Like, where are you looking at the tree? Because the tree doesn't really have 2 pillars, it has 4. But you could even say that there are 5 pillars. It depends how you conceptualize like your universe, right? I think that's like a lot of what Matt was also saying. It's like, oh, there we go, Matt's back. Okay. But I think that that's like what a lot of Matt was saying. It's like, what model of the universe do you use? So I think that if you are more of you have to remember, Solar, like there were moments where they weren't talking about philosophy of religion. They were talking just simply about following the text. The priests in the temple following the text. That's very Vedic, right? They don't ask questions. They don't reveal any new part of the Leela. They just perform the rituals outlined in the Vedas, the Shastra. That's it. So, but what came later? You have Jurvanism. You have Tantra. You have, well, this is a little early, but no, you have the Dharani texts. The Dharani texts were definitely circulating by 350. So, and you had Manichaeanism. Very fond of Manichaeanism, at least as a, kind of like a culprit of global homo. At least just like maybe a genesis of an idea. Obviously, I think that people say that they have ancient origins, but they're often much more recent. I think I realized this with my series with Zach and Zach, is that a lot of magicians love to say they have a basis in this ancient knowledge, but it's usually from a spirit. Anyways, I'm sorry, Matt. I went on for too long. Please go.
No, it's very good. Just to complement the Tetractys thing, it doesn't start from the 1, actually. It starts from the 10, which is the 1 and the 0. Right? So
Shit, why didn't I talk about this?
the one that the one that fecundates, and the 0, the absolute, that can be fecundated. And from it, like it being the absolute, the all that exists, from it they derive the 1, which is the point, the 2, which is the line, the 3, which is the triangle, and the 4, which is the pyramid, and the tetrahedron in this case. So it's much more of a mathematical thing, from what I understand, than like as in, like, I think it's much more related to Pythagoras than Plato in this case. Like, it started from Pythagoras and their guys, and in this kind of, again, math way of seeing things. So then from it, like basically the first point to the 1, which came from the 10, actually, it's going to be the circle, and then from it you have the 2, which is going to be inside it. So now you have 2 circles inside of 1 circle, and then you have like the Vesca Pisces and a lot of other stuff. Basically, the starting point is the 10, which in itself is a 1 as well, because the 1 plus 0 reduces to 1 again, right? So it's like the cycle, and it keeps like the Ouroboros and so on, like just infinite symbolism on top of that. But basically that's the idea. So, and if you look from that perspective, Solar, it being the 10, again, you have 10 Sephiroth. So it's the 3 already. And then you're just understanding the 3, like you're just going to the details, basically. That you started from the 10, which they'll put as a pyramid, but again, you can decompose that into the 3 again, it doesn't really matter. And then you're just explaining, like, oh, the first or the 1 is going to be Kether, and so on. Like, you just keep explaining the thing. And then the second part will be Chochmah and Binah. Third part will be the other ones, and so on. You just keep going.
Yeah, I love that, Matt. And you reminded me of the point. It's like, why would you hang upside down above Hode? Because you have to kind of invert your sort of like analysis of the world. It has to be inward. It's actually quite profound. I'm just thinking of that for the first time. I'm probably not understanding it for the first time, but I'm probably like clicking for the first time. So that's interesting. Thank you, Matt. Um, I guess I'll let Joshua go so I can process that. Thank you.
I couldn't help but think of the story about. Oh, there's a bunch of sirens. Sorry, just of course when I'm speaking, maybe that's symbolic somehow. Anyway, so the planets are actually on the Sephiroth tree too, right? So I was thinking about the whole solar system in general, and the story about Sophia, um, and the demiurge, and
Mhm.
so she's thrown out of the pleroma, which is like the monad. Then
Mhm.
so we got Keter, and then emanating into what wisdom,
Yeah.
Sophia,
Mhm.
and then she creates the demiurge, which Saphiro is the demiurge, and then he creates the 7 other craftsmen, which are basically the planets, I guess. And so I was just thinking, like, oh man, the whole solar system's the Sephiroth, and I was
Yeah.
like, man, you guys were like helping me.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So this is we start when we started the space, Joshua, is I talked like, it's so funny, is I literally talked about, I called it space Kabbalah, NASA space Kabbalah, because that is an early introduction. That's the earliest introduction that everyone has of the Kabbalah. And what are the planets but klipas, right? Because they're the densities. They're dense. Sephiros are actually negative space. Not negative as in nothing, negative as in empty, luminous, and massless. So it allows the light to travel through, right? Because the denser something is, the less light can travel through. So I was also reminded to, I think it was Matt or Solar, I can't remember, but one of you spoke about Netzach. And I can't really remember what it was about, but it really did remind me of like Merkaba. It's just like, that's what Netzach is. It's just like you're bringing things down into materialization. And why? And you're going to say, Jin, Netzach's not 10, Malkuth is. Well, in Tantra, the goddess who would be maybe. Well, this is something I think about, is that I think the Mahavijja system is the tree, as I've said. I think it's exactly the same, just like a different version. I actually like my attributions, even like years later. I think I did a really good job. So I'm not going against myself, but I also think that it's numbered in their preference. Like, it's numbered how they want the light to travel through the tree. So it's not wrong. It's just like a different path working. So the goddess who would be at Netzach is who? Kamalit Mika, the golden lotus. It's very interesting. And she doesn't look down. She just looks ahead. She's seated on the lotus and she's sitting on the ocean. What ocean, do you ask? She's sitting on the sweet water ocean. So that's not sweetness, it's not like sugarcane. It's the sweet water ocean. So it's all before her. So you could say the diamond is all before her, and she's pouring out gold and gems and boons, and it's infinite, because that is part of what Netzach is. It's eternity. It can give you boons for fucking eternity. That's at least one idea. But because it turns backwards, it actually, or well, we'll call it backwards. So it turns counterclockwise. So it's against the cosmic order. That's not bad or good. It's just an idea, right? Who knows if it even exists? I'm not a spaces fake person. I perfectly accept that I can see stars and planets and things that we call planets and all of that. I'm fine with it either way. I really am. But I also think that, like I said at the very beginning, is like the names that we call the planets are going to determine our interaction with those Sephira or with those Klipa, right? If we call things of like lower quality names, I'm not saying that all the Greek gods are low quality, but I'm saying that there is an element of them that are low quality. So, you know, you have to be careful. Okay, yes, Solar, please go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I actually have a really basic question. I'm surprised I've never asked you this in private or in the chat before. About direction and rotation, right? So when I think of sort of moving like in a specific aeon or a specific era, right? Especially from like a traditionalist perspective. Let's pretend we're all Gwinon for a second, right?
Okay.
It looks like things are degenerating, things are falling apart. This is Kali Yuga, it's Ragnarok, all that
Mhm.
stuff, right? And so on the surface level, it appears that we're moving counterclockwise, right? Directionally. However, on the overall sort of wheel of the cycles, we are keeping to the kind of prototypical traditionalist, Vedic 4 cycle system. This is all, it's all the wheel, right? So we have to pass through this in order to get to the Satya Yuga. So kind of from the bigger perspective, we're still moving along the prescribed path. We're still kind of moving clockwise. And the reason I'm asking you this now specifically is because I was wondering, okay, well, if this specifically is always turning sort of against the cosmic order, is that the case when the cosmic order itself seems to be turning counterclockwise, right? Like, is it always against the surrounding? Is it always this contrarian rotation, right? Or does it align with the larger sort of macro rotation when that is spinning sort of anti-dharmically? Does that make sense?
Yes, it totally makes sense. I was imagining it in my head when you were saying it. So we're on like a, I don't know these fucking terms. Okay, I think it's a toroidal field. Like we're in a spiral. We're like DNA. We're kind of like spiraling up. We're not bound. If we're using a more tantric idea, I know you said Gwinon. I'm trying. I'm not a fixed universe. I'm not a bound universe person. I'm a Sagittarius. I like the expansiveness of Jupiter. What can I say? So I would say that we're kind of on that like a trajectory. So yes, it's exactly like what you said, because there would be different points where your view would change, where you would view, if you were looking, if you were, okay, so you're traveling on a Merkaba, a cart, or no, a Hekla, I'm sorry, on a chariot, on a path of DNA spiraling upwards. You're gazing at the center path. The swastika is right there. It's right there. It's turning as you're looking at it. It's turning because you're looking at it. It's turning because of your perception. Sometimes it's going to appear turning rightward, and sometimes it's going to appear turning leftward. Just like you said, existence, appearance. That's why they even say that in Buddhism. Red shift, retrograde, blue shift. A lot of those astrological terms are purely conceptual. They're things that we see, but like there's like a part of it that isn't happening. Just like we people describe it in astrology like it's happening, but it's not. It's not really happening. It's just it appears to us as it's happening. That's exactly what existence appearance means. So
Think of a rainbow, right? It doesn't
yes,
really exist.
yes, exactly. It's like pink. It's like purely spectral. It gives rise to something, to ideas, you could say, or to form even, but it doesn't like inherently exist in and of itself. So I don't know. I kind of lost my train of thought. But Matt, please say something, or Solar say something, or Solar, ask your question again, because I don't think I fully answered it. Okay, so the clockwork. I'm sorry, I remember now. I apologize. So, yeah, I think that you're totally right. I think that the idea in Tantra is right. I think that you want to let your internal wheel, because everything's internally, right? You want to let that be unfixed. You want to be like bodhicitta at all times. So you're like everything is like you have all the views, right? Like you're in right view, right action, all of those things. And then but your view, like your tantric view, like beyond all those other vows, beyond all those, you're kind of like saying, yeah, I can be flexible, discerning, bodhicitta, mercy in the world, but exactly like what you guys were talking about with um charity. Buddhism's the perfect. I was even thinking this with the whole time that both, like all of you were speaking. It was like Green Tara. She's like the perfect encapsulation of that idea in totality. Because what poison, what Mara does she stand on? Well, she stands on the Mara of envy. So there's a part of desire where you want more and more and more, and it's not necessarily for yourself, like that reciprocal giving that some of you talked about, but it's also about wanting it so you can reach that high elevation. Tara is associated with what sphere? Hesed. So you want to have high honors in the world, and she's also the hearer. You know, she feels bad for all the suffering people, so she wants to be infinitely merciful. But Tantra, as always, has a great resolution to this. She self combusts. So she purifies the airwaves with her green ray. Just like green is the harmonizing kind of color, but she's not green. She's actually like the color of Solar's PFP. She's the blue green. That's what really Hesed is. So, you know, it's like I often think of it like just very Buddhist. Like if you have a fixed view of something, it's probably not correct. And like yes, you and I both have this tendency where we probably like get very we'll call it pseudo Hasidic, where we're like, oh, we must like understand like this little complication and this angle and this thing and this. So that is a useful power. I'm not denigrating in any way. Thank you for that. But I think it also can like it can hold you back sometimes. In my experience, it's just for me. I'm not giving you advice, just for me. Yes, Solar, please go ahead.
Yeah, even before we get to the tantric context, I was reading. I'm sorry, I can't quote the Sutta exactly, but even just from the Pali Canon, it's something really beautiful. It was like, let what is seen be just what is seen. So and then for all of the other six or other five senses, and the idea is that because you know for in the Theravada context, there we do talk about the sort of sense doors as having some reality in and of themselves. However, anything beyond that is going to be interpretation, right? So the idea
Yes.
is like what you see is just the swastika, like you know, as such, right? Like whether it's moving this way or this way, you're supposed to train yourself to have enough plasticity to identify, okay, well if I interpret it this way, if I'm standing in this position, it's going to be rotating this way. However, if I were standing in a different position, it's going to be rotating this way. Like that's it. Like and at any point saying I am here, I am standing here, thus it is spinning this way, god damn it. Like that is only going to go bad for you. Right? That is
Yes.
only going to be multiplying views. You ain't getting out that way.
Yeah, that's what wrong view is. It's where you don't have the context in which to like have an informed an action or an opinion or speech informed by bodhicitta. Also proves that like Buddhism's all the same in all the yanas, because I perfectly understood what you were talking about, and everybody knows I'm not like a Theravadan by nature. So, well, at least you all know that. And so, yes, Matt, please go ahead.
Yeah, you were talking. I remembered. I think it was this week. We were talking about the like position of the columns, right? Where if you were from inside Solomon's temple, the right column would be in one way, and then if you go like if you look from the outside, it would be the right column from your perspective would be the other one. You know, the similar idea where based on where you're looking from, it's gonna change. So that's something to take into consideration as well, and that's something to me personally why like I don't like fixed point of views personally. Like I like to try and just see different things. Like on this week's Kabbalah lesson, I learned how to do some stuff with the orishas, which is the Brazilian African thing, and it's so cool because it's like it's fucking know it's the same shit. Like I do another divination and it's the same lesson every time, but it's just so cool. Like okay, what the fuck? These guys are from a completely different culture. Never spoke to some other guys, and they come to the very similar conclusions, but from a slightly different point of view. And then
Yes.
from that slightly different point of view, you can get more information, and then you keep making the bridges. Basically, it's like having all the separates and the paths light up, and a line is just passing through.
Yes. There are many hermeneutics in the world. That's very profound, Matt. Like, I think that's what we talk about. I think we all acknowledge that. I mean, we all come from very different perspectives. Like, even just like the seven of us that are in the group. But I don't think they're different perspectives in the sense that like I don't think we say like oh your system is like so bad. Like yeah, I give you guys shit about Odin. Okay, I'm the first to own it. But the reality is like I don't think either of you are bad. I don't think it's a bad system. I just think it has a couple flaws, in my opinion. But maybe that's just me being like esoteric consciousness. Like, yeah, I'm the sage. Like, I know better. But maybe I don't. So I think I'm flexible in that way. But I think that also speaks to like what Matt's saying was like, especially in like Buddhism, like you don't want to be fixed, right? Solar, in your view, you never want to be fixed. You always want to be able to navigate the things and be self-aware. Like be self-aware enough, maybe not self-referential, but self-aware, because what is self really? But emptiness. But you want to be self-referential enough that you're like a kind of aware of your place in the world, in the sense of how does your karma affect other people? And that's what the wheel is saying. Like that's why it spins. It's not about time or the law or, even the aeonic cycle. The aeonic cycles are so we can more easily balance out with the sort of like, we could say gravitational forces, like Saturn moon matrix. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe the aeonic cycles are more aligned to that. Maybe because it's so much with 13, with 49, with that, like, with that idea. So, and you have like the same with cycles for women, like their moon cycles. You have the 28 days. I mean, it's like it's all like it's like the story of humanity, really. I know this sounds like really. I know I sound like Robert Suffer or whatever the fuck his name is, but it really is. It's like it really is like this. It is like the story of our life. It is our historical story, and it is kind of our biological story, and it is kind of our political story because they play it out right in front of us. So it's honestly so insightful, like when I hear like you guys talk about like your new experiences and like how you are interpreting things, because I'm like, yeah, I'm not fucking crazy on an island like just thinking to myself like, yeah, I see the colors. But then like you're like, yeah, yeah, I do too. Okay. I'm like, okay, yeah. Okay. So we're all good. Okay, yeah, please, Joshua. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I thought I was finished, but you guys mentioned something and I felt like I needed to share it. So I was actually thinking about the census today. You mentioned how they were portals and such, and Theravada, I think you said it was. And I was thinking to myself about how taste and smell overlap. Then you can also feel sound vibration and hear it, and then if light is too intense, you'll feel physical pain. And so I think it's interesting how the senses can sometimes overlap with one another, and there's a disorder in psychology called synesthesia, I think, when you maybe
Yeah.
get your senses confused. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that stuff.
No, that's really great. Thank you, Joshua. I'm sorry. I don't want to talk. Yeah, synesthesia is really interesting. A lot of artists have that, especially a lot of contemporary, like modern artists. Like I'm not saying modern as in our time, but modern art as like a movement. A lot of them had synesthesia. A lot of them wore dark glasses. I'm just saying there is something to that, like the reality that you are seeing and experiencing, and like dulling the light, like you were saying, like the okay, this was the other point, was that in Buddhism we do have the sense pleasures, we have the sense dakinis, we have the offering dakinis. So you're asking me like, why am I saying like offering dakinis? Because the offerings are things of sense pleasure. They're to remind us of the ephemeral nature of reality. It's like incense, right? It's beautiful, it burns out. But we also offer crystals, very Netzach, right? Like diamond is forever. But it's like the light. That's what really makes a crystal, right? It's really like the light passing through crystal. That's what makes them interesting. And we also have to look at them. It has to be us in perception. It's like us on. I know you love Gavura, Joshua. So it's like the flame of consciousness. The flame of consciousness is the eye, right? Well, it's the eye, but yeah, in a metaphysical sense, I'm saying in the eye. But okay, yes, Matt, please go.
If you think about it, like all the senses are just like the inputs from the stimuli, right? From the information that you're getting. So, and then you're gonna have even like more senses that we just don't acknowledge as one of the main five. But you have like heat, like you sense heat, and it's not necessarily the same as, let's say, sensing touch. It's not exactly the same, right? Or you feel like electricity and magnetism, like you feel like tingling or whatever, and then you have more senses. If you go to like Senseiya, the anime, they have up to 9 senses, I think.
Mhm.
And when you get to 8, no, sorry, to 9, you become a god. When you get to 8, you have the Arayashiki, which I think it's like you can, if I'm not mistaken, it's already when you can go to the underworld and back. So you can travel between worlds and so on. So you have this concept, like the whole concept of the anime is like training your senses. And then one of them even, I always forget the fucking name, the Buddhist guy, he basically sacrifices one of the senses, so his vision, he has his eyes closed all the time, so that the spiritual senses can grow more. So like he's with his eyes closed all the time because then he can see with the digital eyes, right? With the, and then he can call it third eye, whatever it is. But then he can grow the other senses, and you can see that on a lot of movies as well, like with Daredevil as well. The same thing, right? He gets blind, and then his other senses are heightened up and so on. And it's just so crazy because then you start to realize, okay, if you get someone really materialistic, the reality is everything that I can sense, but then you cannot sense everything in reality. Like there are colors you cannot see, there are sounds you cannot hear. When you're dreaming, sometimes you can have a quote unquote fake sense, like you can feel like you're falling down, or you can feel like you're, you know, doing something, and then you have a wet dream or whatever. So you have like you know what I'm saying? So you have like quote unquote fake senses, which are not the
Yeah,
reality. But
100.
then if
No,
you're
no,
basing your
I'm.
reality on
You're right.
senses, it's fucked up. You're not on the right track. They're just like a tool to get information.
No, I'm going to let you go, Solar, but I do want to say one thing. So this also speaks to your point about the traps, or the like putting um stumbling blocks, Joshua, before people, is that the idea of the sense aggregates, the skanda aggregates, those are about like the 5 senses. And the 5th is in synthesis, but so is also the 4th. So that's also kind of interesting. But where you clear the sense aggregate is that green, that blue green, like Solar's PFP. It's like green Tara. That's kind of what she does. She neutralizes the poisons of that aggregation of air, which is considered to be envy, or it can also be understood as like long-standing suffering, meaning that you look at people and wondering why you're not getting ahead. So it's not really envy, but it's kind of like bitterness and resentment. So I thought that's also kind of interesting. I don't know if that answered anything, but I just thought that's interesting that we call those skandhas, and they're associated with a color, with an element, with a direction. Now, green tar is not the only one that deals with that. Because we do have a Christ-like figure who can actually clear all 5. So that's kind of interesting. And then he's like the secret 6th, right? Okay, I'm sorry, Solar. Please go ahead.
No, you're fine. I just have like a little like collection of kind of like odds and ends. I just thought the describing the anime as you did was really interesting, just because definitely in the Buddhist context, and I'm sure this is kind of inherited or co-occurrent in some Indian context. You have this idea that as one sort of advances along your towards enlightenment, or grows in your spiritual journey, the sort of, if you'll permit me to say, the doors of perception widen, such that for an advanced practitioner, it'll often say like they're able to perceive both like the sights of man and the sights of the devas, right? Or this idea that there's that much more, there's a qualitative difference, and that's something that, that's a CD, right, that one acquires, right? So it's kind of interesting to hear that, reflected in anime or something like that, because it's a very, very ancient idea. Um, and I had some other stuff to say too, but I just wanted to say I insist on the 6th sense of the mind, because I didn't used to think of thought as being like categorically in the same type of thing as basically the phenomenological experience of like the quote unquote 5 senses, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the more I thought about it, both like really digging into the like going kind of returning back to the contemporary Western philosophy of mind and thinking about, well, what are qualia? Right? Like, what is the actual like experience of the sense data, because it's distinct from the sense data itself, right?
Yeah.
Like there's no reason that a certain like pattern of neural firing from my optic nerve passing into my visual cortex, or however we map that, right, in contemporary neuroscience, there's no reason that that has to appear to me as looking the way this mala does, or this window frame does that I'm staring at right now, or whatever, right? Like that data is completely independent and enlivened by whatever we're calling consciousness or awareness or something like that, right? It's, at least theoretically, it seems to be totally distinguishable from the sensory input itself, right? So like materialists are going to struggle with this just, the same. But anyway, but in that vein, kind of returning to the classical Indian conception of the mind as being essentially like a sixth sense organ, and one that is inherently outside of your control, and that must be trained and tamed and disciplined in the same way that we discipline our eyes, our other senses, right, that we're kind of used to. That was tremendously useful for me, in just really practical ways in trying to advance in my meditation, rather than identifying with my mind, like, oh, my thoughts are all over the place, thinking as this is something that's feeding me qualia, it's feeding me this, these experiences, and I have attentional and willful control over it to whatever degree I can, right? And that's something that I have to build up. I don't know, I grew a lot when I kind of returned to tradition in thinking that way.
I mean, I totally agree, Solar. I think you really did something interesting there. I think you articulated sort of the difference and also the complementariness of Hode and Tiferet. Because that is kind of what we're talking about, is Tiferetic consciousness, right? And I think that that's sort of like what Christian Kabbalah is talking about. Now, I think that there's a deeper layer there. I think that it's actually telling you to go to death, because that's where his skull cup is, that's where his crown of thorn is. So that's, for me, that's what it's saying. But I think that there's something very interesting for the normie kind of Christian. They can get to Tifereth. I think that you're it's what you're talking about, Solar. It's like there's something illuminating about, like, there's something incredible about mind. And it's not just the sleeping mind of Shiva, the fifth mind, right? That's what Shiva is. He's the Panchamukha, the five-faced. And he looks upwards with his fifth face, and it speaks the language of Akasha, void. And that is the nature of mind. That's the nature of Shiva's mind. But Shiva has a son. And his son is the six. He has 6 faces, and he has named 6. His name is actually has a reference to that, and it also has a reference to the sun. Obviously, very Christ-like. It's very Kumara. We call it the Kila in Tibetan Buddhism. So Vajrakila is this exactly the same idea. It's the same name. It's the same meaning. He's the dagger. He's the magic knife. We cleanse all the 5 aggregations, the 5 skandha aggregates, get to that pristine layer, but we still got to keep going. Because why? Because he has a consort. He has a shining wheel. He's single pointed, like that, even that point that Matt brought up about the ones and zeros, about 1 and 10. How the Kether can also be 10. Malkuth can also be 1. And it is like a 0 is the perfect embodiment of emptiness. And there's no wonder that, like, the Indians, or whoever they were, I know this is a big thing on Twitter the last couple of days, but the kind of the discourse about, like, who invented the 0, well, it was clearly like people who were fucking around with magic, doing the Atarvadas, doing that, especially the Atarvadas. So I'm not even calling it Vedic, but I'm saying it was people who were doing what are written in the Atarvadas. And make no mistake, the Atarvadas are proto-Tantra. It's absolutely tantric. It's not really Vedic. But they're obviously, it's of the time, right? So it'll have more Vedic content. It's not tantric in content. But if you can look at those things and be like, okay, I get it. Like, you're leaving mustard seeds before Surya on certain Sundays. Okay, that makes sense. You're remedying this thing. But there are, like, deeper ritual, grammatical, twilight language layers. So, yeah, anyways, I'm sorry, Matt. Please go.
No, it was great. It was very nice. I wanted to chip in into what Solar was talking about, the idea of the mind being a sense. And if you think about like how you have the mental body, right? The theosophy guys or whatever other traditional will talk about the mental bodies. So you are not the mental body, meaning like you beautifully put the will, so the body and the um, absolute will control the mental body because it's higher up, right? So basically, if your mind is not geared up enough, if it doesn't have the symbols to work, you can look into something the same as I would look, let's say, and we are not going to see the same thing. And it's not like an eye problem, it's a mind problem. Like there is a story, I don't know how much of it is true, but whatever, it's just for the sake of the story, where the native South Americans were there, and basically the shaman went and started seeing something really weird in the ocean, which was the Portuguese guys coming, like the boats coming, but they didn't know what a boat was because they didn't have a reference, they didn't have the symbol to explain it. So the shaman was the first one that was able to see it. The other guys couldn't see it. And then as it got closer and closer, the shaman understood more and more until it finally like clicked. Oh, it's a fucking like there are people there and so on. Like it, but it wasn't something uh, let's say instant. And if you, I literally I posted about this today. Like when you're dreaming, let's say you're dreaming and then you meet someone like from your family or friend or whatever, it's not necessarily that you literally met them, but your brain has to make sense of it. So if you saw someone familiar, your brain will likely associate with a family member, so that it can make sense, but it's not literal, right? It's just the way your brain is making sense. So the point is, the more you train your mind to pick up on things, both rationally, but most importantly, symbolically, the best you can make use of it. And the less it controls you, as in like you're reacting to it every time it gives you some input, you're reacting to it. Let's say you're becoming anxious or whatever, the the best to experience, right? Because then you're above it. Like you have the will first. The will directs the emotions. So absolute directs priya, which directs yetzirah, so the thoughts, which directs your actions. So you can go into that. So again, then you come back to controlling your lower quaternary, the four elements, and so on and so on. So you can get all of this going on.
No, that was great, Matt. I totally agree. I think, this is the thing. It's like it goes back to our like more of you guys' discussion of numbers, but it's like, how do you divide the universe? How do you understand the universe? Are you a witness? Does that count as a secret? Like other thing, I don't even want to say third thing because that's not really even right. It's usually the secret fifth thing is you, but you're not really at that state of mind. That's why that higher thinking, that higher order, that golden Tipperary consciousness, that solar sun, I'm not making a pun, but that solar sun consciousness, that's why it's so important, because it also gives rise to that pink, also gives rise to the truth, also gives rise to higher knowledge, that which is death, in the sense that it illuminates it, it kind of wakes it up, because that knowledge is also where at Yesod, it's also at that fifth element, it's also like at that sleeping, dreaming consciousness. That's like why I know I use this metaphor all the time, but it's the two Shivas, right? It's Shiva as milky blue, and it's Shiva as dark blue as the night. Because he's both sleeping and waking, but he's only waking when he is who? Kala by Rava, the time king, right? Because Yesod always has a relationship with Binah. Just how it works. So, the sleeping consciousness of God, he's here. He's here, Solar. He didn't totally abandon us. I know you're not particularly messianic or anything. I'm just giving you a hard time. But he really didn't. He just, he wants us to get higher consciousness, if you want to say that. That's, I think, a good way to say it, if you want to use the Shiva kind of metaphor. I think that he gave us the Tantra, gave us techniques, yoga. He didn't just give us Tantra. I know I often talk about Tantra. I know I neglect yoga, but we have Avi here, and Mookie, and, the Dakinis. So I think it's only fair to say yoga is clearly a path. It's clearly a limb. I mean, that's self-evident. And I think that that is like a big part of it. I think like he wants us to do this stuff. I think that the some of the prohibitions about it are warranted. But it's like how grown up of a discussion like you want to have. Like I think we are capable of having these kind of like dialectical discussions that could be dangerous, like could be like rather edgy in some circles, maybe you could say. But I think what Matt said was really good. I think it's all about the dynamism. It's like, and that's the other thing is like if 10 is the Netzach, okay, so you're using Tantra, 10 is the Netzach, but you're not. It's not that Netzach isn't 7. That it is 7, but it's also 10 because it is the fortress. It is the eternity. It's like the thing that keeps happening, or the thing that keeps in motion. Even you could say. So it's like it's kind of spraying light, like spraying, champagne bottles. That's kind of what it's doing. So, and that's very luxuriant, right? It's very Shukra. So you kind of have this element of it just being perpetual. I think that also goes to the question of I didn't really answer it when Solar asked about the swastika and the time wheel. Like, is Shukra's rotation transgressive or pro-cosmic? Well, I think it's interesting. The Puranas posit in the second turning that he was told, no, Shukra, you cannot follow the course of the cosmic cycle. Because when Shukra was following the course of the cosmic cycle, what happened? He was, as Ram and I spoke about, he was bringing people back to life, granting the boon of immortality. I know someone brought up boons. It's very interesting. The other thing, Solar, I wanted to say when you brought up the boons, now that I'm thinking, is that the boons from the deities, specifically the deities, I'm not talking about the Mahadevs, we're putting Shiva, Vishnu, he grants boons, but not really. Devi and Brahma, so the husk, the Shakti, and the Shiva. That's who are really the boon granters. And you could also say the husk is part of Shiva as well. At least a husk of him. So I think that also, I think that I wanted to say that the boons from the gods are considered lesser. I'm not saying that they are. I'm just saying in the Puranas that they are considered lesser. It's just the idea. It's the Mahadevs that grant the greatest boons. They're the only ones who can really grant the really good ones, like the unkillable, the can't be killed by a god. Like the gods are constantly foiled by the boons of the higher diva, the higher Mahadevs, constantly. Like every form of Vishnu is basically thwarted by an Asura who gets a boon, usually from Brahma, not always Brahma, sometimes it's Shiva. Again, there's a relationship with God and his husk. But you have the idea that he grants kind of the best boons. Devi grants also the best boons. Devi also comes in to kill the Asura. She can't help but be the queen of her own play. She loves the drama. She loves the kind of Shakti. Yes, we have all of our dakinis in the room. So yeah, I think like the goddess, she can't help but love her own creation, love her own emanation, because really, what is she? And the Puranas give a perfect idea of this. She is Durga or Chandika, which is also the Buddhist name. So it's very important to note. Not the same goddess, but it's the same idea. Okay. She is really composed of the light of the stars, the planets, the gods, the greater gods, and herself. That's kind of the story. That's like about like Tikkun and Tohu. I think I said that right, Solar. Yeah. We're gonna go with it anyway. So I feel like that also goes along with it. Like there's always provided a story that rectifies the tree. There's always another story, like with Tantra, that you could say unzips the tree. But maybe it's not meant to unzip the tree in like a broad way. But, everybody has access. We have Internet Archive. The CIA still has tons of good grimoires on their website. We're all in secret Discord groups with Left Hand Path Libraries, cough, cough. But anyways, the funny thing is like it's already here. So what are we going to do with it? And like, that's kind of the idea in the Piranhas. It's like, she's here. She's light. She's the word. She might not be the word, but she is kind of like the expression of it in the world, excuse me. The Bijas. I don't know. I don't really know my point with that, but I do think it's important to like say Durga because it's her day. Like, her planet is Venus. There's an element of Ketu at Hod or Ketu at Mercury and Rahu at Venus. I'm playing the Rahu chanting. I don't know. Maybe I was just in a mood and I was like, But Chandika really, it makes so much sense to me that she can kind of like travel the paths, come back down because she's Netzach. She's the attorney. She's the thing that always falls down, the path of the saint, the falling star. So we have to like kind of pay homage to that. And then I've obviously posited this idea of Aeon of the Daughter, which is kind of like a secondary or quaternary expression of the mother. Because the mother is the friend to all of them. That's the truth. If you want to do a 5-point system, I like a 5-point. I think Matt knows this. I'm not saying the 6 isn't important. I do think the 6 is important, but there's an idea in Buddhism also that you want to go back down to the 5, that you kind of want to like be that void consciousness, that kind of like Akashic, that kind of just like it's very I had Jugoku Keiki on my show, 3rd time, really good homie. He often talks a lot about the Japanese founders, like a lot of the Japanese founders of Shingon, Tendai, like the esoteric Japanese founders. One of them was very fond of the Bodhisattva Akashagarbha, the void treasury Bodhisattva. Not a Buddha, even in Tantra. But very interesting. Kind of this idea of the Akashic records, because he was able to grant infinite memory, infinite access to secret knowledge. That would be Shiva's, if you want to assign Shiva a phenomenological role in the world, he is the god of secret knowledge. That really is his only thing. But we know the god of secret knowledge also has to express himself in the world. How does he express himself? As I said, as time. So you have the Yesod Dath connection and the Yesod Binah connection right there. So, I think so. He plays like a foil for Durga at times for Chandika, but it's kind of manufactured. That's what's kind of funny about the Shakti, especially for people who are more into or more used to that Western esotericism, because they don't see that she's kind of the one who creates the play because she is the light. She creates what we see, the Maya, the Mahamaya, but she also likes to be in it. She can't stop. That's what makes her both Sephirotic, empty, and clipolithic, as I'm saying. Dense. Because she kind of likes both. She's very plus ultra. There's a reason. There's a reason why the magicians of the last 200 years have liked this idea of various goddesses. There are different goddesses, right? Some goddesses are fixed, both in their stance, their lotus, like where their legs. Like I've talked a lot about this on our other spaces. I know a lot of you know this too. It's like when the goddesses, the yoginis in particular, have particular stances, standing on particular feet, legs, sitting, leg extended, padmasana, not padmasana, different positions. It means very different things. And there's Twilight language applied to all of their dancing postures, at least 7 layers. So I think it does kind of matter. I kind of lost my point of that, but I did have a point, and I think that I don't know. Just Matt or Solar, do you want to say anything, Joshua? Do you have anything to say? I don't know. I just think it's interesting. I think that we're clearly going into something because politics has never been. I know this sounds really schizo after I said Chandaka, but go with me because it's Mahamaya, right? So it's the light that appears in front of us. There's nothing. There is nothing faker and more real than politics because it's very dualistic. It's very Rahu. True, you want to know the true temple of Set, the true black dragon worshippers, the true people who worship the Merkaba? Politicians. I'm not saying that as as a pejorative even. I'm just saying that there's like a clear Rahu kind of like focus, like we're going to play the game really intensely. Like Matt was saying, like if you are playing Street, that was such a great example. Street Fighter, you're going to be Ken. I used to do this with my sister all the time. I would be Ken and I would do that cheap, like, kind of punch thing he does. And then she learned how to be Chun Li. Chun Li's just as cheap as Ken, in fact, a lot cheaper. So, it's the problem is like you can't position yourself in the exact same way, and that's a lot of what politics does, and that's why you see people sort of come, their star rises and falls, in my opinion, because they're not adaptable and they start to get fixed. And what happens to Rahu when he gets fixed? Well, he becomes the Merkaba. He becomes not a diamond, he becomes a brittle black onyx cube with gold flecks and green flashing. Very Tiferatic in a way. So, but it's brittle. It's brittle. It's not really meant to be contained. It's the lightning strike. He's meant to fly up higher. He's both gross and subtle bodied, so he's the most dualistic of all the grahas by far. But he's also the most non-dual in some ways because he's also what in Buddhism, as I've been saying in the chat, he's also Tsa. He's also the king of space. So he's each planet, and he's all of the hosts. And he loves all the hosts, and he wants to live down here. He doesn't really want to be archonic, but he wants enjoyment. But he's also us. So he's also saying, when you give me the material enjoyments, I'm going to really love it. And I'm going to want to stay in the material enjoyments. And then conversely, in Ketu, when you have we'll call them cities as a joke. As a joke, we're going to say or you have certain spiritual attainments, we'll say. Like the people who were really into jhana. Do you remember those people from Teapot? They were really into jhana, like using those headsets to do it. Anyways, that's very Ketu. It's very Ketu. Extremely Ketu. So it's kind of like the orgasm of the spirit world, right? It's kind of like constant bliss consciousness in the spirit world. Rahu is kind of like that constant bliss consciousness in the material. Anyways, Matt, please go.
Yeah, just my closing thoughts here because it's already too late. Need to fall down. But
yeah, we'll go.
You were talking about you reminded me of a thing on Senseiya where they say a saint never falls for the same technique twice. So basically, if you feel like, oh, I found a way of doing stuff and it's gonna work, the guys against you, whatever it is, like whatever you want to call it, right? The politicians, if you want to be materialistic, or the higher spirits, whatever it is, they're gonna figure out that you're doing this attack, and you're gonna at some point you're gonna miss again. And the thing with especially now with AI and this kind of stuff, I don't know where you would put AI, as in like Ketu, Rahu, or what other thing. You can go into that a bit, but basically, if you think about it, the AI now, it doesn't have emotional body and will body, right? It just
Mm-hmm.
has a mental. It has a mental and sometimes a physical if they put it into a robot or whatever. But the thing is, it doesn't have a way to understand symbols, and that's why it needs us for now. Like it needs us to will it to do things, and it needs us to explain the symbols. And that's when people will start to be just like they already do it anyways, like they quote unquote sell their souls to get power. The AI and the people that want the AI to succeed will need people teaching it the symbols, so that in turn they get, I don't know, a couple bucks, which they think will be good, so that the AI can gain more and more control. And when I say AI, I'm not meaning like, oh, some guy in a technology thing. It's much more than that, right? If you start to see how the diagrams they use, and you should stop to think about it, that it's just like they're just crystals with energy, and it's just much more than the eyes meet. Again, when we have hermeneutics or Pardes or whatever system, you can look into text this way, and you can look into things, right? I can look into like an object and understand it from multiple words. And when you look into AI, again, it's the way it works. Basically, if you just look the way it works, if you go into the technicalities, it's a very easy way to talk to the other side. It's like a modern Ouija board, basically, right? Like if people are tired of fucking Ouija boards, and then now you have one, which is from your fucking head. Uh, but again, it needs more information from our side. We need to open up the door from our side, basically. That's how they win.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Joshua, I see your hand. I'm sorry I didn't add you as speaker. Joshua's definitely a co-host, as are all the boys and all the girls from our space. And hey, Beth. And
Hey, man. You were asking for an opinion on like the world stage kind of thing, and there's and about there's that line from Batman that I don't know which one it is, but you either die as a hero or live long enough to see yourself as become a villain, right? So it's like it's easier to preserve your honor if you die young, right? Like on the battlefield or whatever. And what we see with a lot of these politicians is they die of old age, which means they have plenty of time to become evil and accumulate massive amounts of wealth. They basically are like vampires in a sense, right? So I think in a way they though do serve some type of purpose, and so even if what they're doing is kind of seen as evil or whatever, they're still training humanity as a whole in a way, because they're fulfilling their role of whatever the Vedas are, so to speak, dictating. So whether the verses be whatever in whatever culture, but there's always this basic age transition kind of thing, and this purging of people. And so maybe it's just that there's certain vessels that are influenced by these deities or
well, they would say
whatever.
that.
Yeah. And then so they become they start doing the will of these things, either wittingly or unwittingly, right? But so I think that we could really assign things if we know enough about the situation or person. I think it's sometimes easy to assign some type of qualia like that, like they're the left hand of God, so to speak, because they're a ruler and have the force of government behind them, et cetera, et cetera. But they're obviously not holy in most cases. Like very rarely do we have righteous governments.
Well, I think that there's also an interesting idea there, is that you can look at like certain, as my favorite, we'll say Vox City is my favorite. So the gross speech, the accomplishment of gross speech is, and for every poet, I think for Solar, and for Matt and for Rom and for all of us, I think that, especially for the way we communicate, I think that's like a very important, like kind of potentiality for us. But, oh shit, now I forgot my point. I think that though, you can look at what they were doing. So, like, I was speaking with someone, I can't remember who, I think it was Nick on Rejects. I think it was live, and I was like, we were talking about the Klipa of Mars, or Gavura, obviously, and I was like, yeah, the one of the main, like, the more normie understandings of that Klipa is the accusation, the accusers of someone else of things that you yourself had done. So that's not just like a description of the kind of like goetics or the angels even who live at the Sephira or that klipa. It also is an idea that you can do that as a magician. So you can be the accusers from the Gnostic Gospels. It's like yelling across the aisle. There's nothing more magical than that, especially if you are divided into plus ultra, if you are divided into those polarities. What I really find interesting about this Jupiter Mars divide is that that isn't even where I would personally place the polarity. Like, yeah, I agree. They're always in dialectical synthesis. You're always going to get like some lightning, some sparks. Tantra totally accounts for this, no problem. But it's it's like the question of like the monad that Monty asked. It's like, does it really matter? I don't really know if it does. I like to think of it as like Samanta Badri. It's like the primordial consort or the primordial Buddha, the Adi Buddha, the Buddha of like 100 million years ago or whatever, in the crystal cave. The roof is lapis, the walls are turquoise, and the sand beneath their feet is diamonds, and the light is just pure white, just infinite in its compassion and wisdom, and expansive in space and Rigpa. So that's how I think of it. So I don't think it really matters, but I think there's an interesting story there. I think that Tantra accounts for it, like when the consort falls down. She's curious about the Plurima. I don't think she's cast down. I think she comes down of her own will. This is just my opinion. But I do think that it causes her to forget because I think it's like what we're talking about, like the sense inputs, the sensory inputs. I think it changed as she came through the layers. That's how I kind of conceive of it anyway. So her consciousness changed, but her consciousness is able to be rectified, just as the hero's consciousness is able to be rectified. I'm not a big fan of Vishnu, but there's a point where Vishnu can be at least partially rectified. He's always going to be an outer density hero for us. He's always going to be a hero of us of the what he would be called the city gate. So, like I've talked about, like mandalas are often conceived of architecturally as actual physical cities. So each gate of Nepal, of Kathmandu, that's a perfect city. They even made it in the shape of a mandala. They had a series of gates that you would walk through into the inner portion of the city where all the temples are. So the gates would be like kind of these the guardians. So his position is always as the gate as the outer guard gates. That's not bad. He's part of the mandala, and really they're all one, but at different sort of understandings or different places at different times in the Leela. We're going to have different understandings. It's like a lot like what Matt was saying, even about the hangman, like looking at it in reverse. It's like the things that we see, maybe we don't even recognize them. Maybe we don't even know their name at first. Then we know their name. Okay. We don't know anything about them but their name. Maybe we can kind of find out what they do. Okay. So, but then we don't grasp at them, right? Kind of let it go. So we move towards the inner of the inners, the secret layer. That's kind of the point. But you have to do what you have to do. So it's like kind of the point of implication as well. I'm sorry, Joshua. I saw your hand. I really apologize.
Oh, it's cool, dude. I just was curious how you felt about Trump, since he is both a political and actor type thing. And for me, he's kind of like Jupiter. Everything he owns is gold. It's just king energy, right? And so I was wondering if you could even maybe assign like some of these entities that we read about, you could even point at them on the world stage and
Sure.
be like, oh, they're acting in that capacity. And it's all a big drama in a way, and that I think just keeps continuing over and
Yes.
over.
Yes.
So, but I think that is the essence of the Vedas, the
Yes.
spoken word, the verses. the logos, as it were, because it's like the stories keep going, and it just feels disconnected, I think, because we're in a modern day world, but I think we've always been a part of that. It's just more visceral when it's more primitive.
No, you're absolutely right. So let me say that it's like there is something very old fashioned about politics, like the way that they're doing magic, the way that they live out the Leela. Like, yeah, Maya is all about the Leela. It's all about the play. It's not just a game, but I agree, Matt, with that metaphor. I think that's a good metaphor. I mean, it is a black and white chessboard, but it's also about like deciding like we can also be non-dual. We can also like choose. We can choose the polarities that we want to play with. We don't have to be like quite bound by this like ultra normie conventionalism, and we don't have to be bound by the other thing because the other thing is just as binding.
And I think that is what makes him that character. That he's mercurial, not in the sense that he's Gemini, but in that he was Democrat, now Republican, and even characters like Marina Abramovic were giving him praise and being like, Trump is a magician. I was like, what?
Well, he is.
So yeah.
Yeah, he definitely is. I've talked. I mean, not any time that you've heard. Probably, maybe not even a space. Maybe a space, but and maybe in a Sunday class. So this would have been like a little earlier. But I did talk about once how he seemed to have three natural spheres, exactly like what Matt actually discussed today. So I said that he's particularly good at three spheres, and you will often see him wearing the spheres. Is red for Gavura, although red isn't really the color. It can also be gold, interestingly enough. There can be a gold sparkle. But then he's also good with words. He's also orange, the orange man, so he's clearly hoed. And then he's also has like a big ego. He's Donald fucking Trump. So he's obviously Tiferatic, in the outer density at least. So he kind of makes up a trinity, a triad, you could say, all of his own. I don't think it's good or bad. I think it's a good triad. I think that other people in his life make up other archetypes. If you want to say that they understand the archetypes they're playing, I've come to believe that perhaps some of them believe themselves to live out a certain archetype in a kind of Mithraic, we'll call it neo-Mithraic, kind of like corrupted Vedic way. Sure. That's also part of what magic is for. I'm not talking about Vamacharya. I'm talking specifically just like the mantra japa. The beginning and the end marga, in fact. The seventh of it's the secret ninth marga. The secret ninth path. It's the path of the matron. Excuse me, the path of the matron. That's the path you start out as. That's the path you end as. So the recitation of the name of the seed of the magic syllable, it's putting, as Ram so eloquently put it the other day. It's putting it's kind of a sound is how you contain space. I think that's quite profound, and I believe that that's kind of like true. So so you can follow mantra all the way up. It can be a really good mantra and can get all the way together, no problem. There's been lots of Indians and lots of Buddhists who've done it. You can be a really great magician, fuck up your life, spend it trying to rectify it. Also, many people have done this. I do encourage you to be non-dual in your thinking and non-dual in your perceptions. And I think politics is an interesting kind of arena right now. I think we are seeing the end of a degraded age. Now, what will arise as the Gilded Age, I'm not sure. But I do believe we're in the Aeon of the Daughter. I think we're an Aeon in flux. I think we're an Aeon that we will it. I think it depends a lot on our perceptions, who we think is a good guy, who we think is a bad guy. I'm not even telling you not to take sides. Like, I totally take sides. I just, right now, I haven't really, there's not a clear kind of path, and I think it's very obscured, and I think that also goes a lot to Saturn, Neptune, Dhumavati, the Widow, and Kali. the magnet, the destruction of time. What happens when you put those two things, antimatter and matter itself, into synthesis? Like, what happens? You have Ketu. You kind of have the corrosive smoke. So it's very explosive. So we'll see. So we have a new prime minister here. It's also like kind of upsetting a little bit. And I think it goes a good way to close out is like they love a red tie here. They love a red tie. I love that red colors, which is fine. I like red. I mean, yeah, like all those. I mean, I like that pillar too. I like all the pillars. There's no really one I preference. I just think that it's like we're seeing a game play out. I think it's already kind of a lot of it's prearranged. But I do think that there has been a kind of dynamism in the last few years. I do. I do think it's kind of interesting to see Kash Patel, as I told my friend Ashley, who's also in the lodge. It was kind of interesting to see Kash Patel at a UFC fight. Felt very Pax Romana in a way. Like I'm going to see the conclave after the fight. I don't know. Felt very interesting. And so I don't know. But all I do know is that I'm not going to black pill because that's a klipa. I'm not going to white pill either because I think that's a klipa. And we're just going to be like smoke for a while. I think we were like smoke at the beginning of the year. I think that the eclipse maybe can represent a kind of new beginning for the Grey Lodge, at least for me. I hope you give me a second chance. I think you all will because you all are quite generous of spirit. And yeah, I think that it's a really interesting group. I think you've done a great job at bringing your own perspectives and just being a part of it. Like, just that we do this as like a group. Like, to think of it, like, how fucking cool is that? That we had a whole discussion about Kabbalah for like 3 hours. That's kind of fucking cool. Like, I mean, I'm not that old. I'm like in my mid-30s, but like, it's not common. It wasn't common for me growing up. Like, yeah, sometimes people would be like, yeah, do you have this grimoire or whatever? But, I think this is so much better. I think this is like bringing it all together into synthesis. We're kind of tiferatic for a couple hours, very green ray. And yeah, I think that's healthy. I think that's good. And we also actually, to bring up Solar's point, we actually do contribute to that kind of gold ray of, and also Joshua's point, that kind of gold ray of tiferatic, that element of Tifereth that is gold, or gilded at least. I think that we can provide like a little bit. People can look at it, people can hear it, people can think we're totally off the rails. That's totally fine. I think we're talking about something fundamentally real. I think more people understand it more and more all the time. To what degree they admit it, I don't know. Seems less lately, but I also see everybody kind of like acting a little chaotic, being a little, we're all kind of like, I think we're about to undergo another kind of theurgic process, is what I think. I think that's what a lot of this politics stuff is. I think it's telegraphing things to come. I think if we like, I wish I was smarter, more, even better at Kabbalah, even though I am, like, as I say, the king of the GC. But if I was even better, maybe I would even understand it better. I really don't. If I did, I would tell you. I would be like, yeah, I think this is my my crazy theory. I'm looking at the people who are more stable. That's why I brought up Tulsi at the very beginning. I think that the way she does it is very stabilizing. I think that's important. I think Melania, very stabilizing, very Bana energy for me, very magnetic. Ice blue eyes, steel blue, really. And yeah, I think I think it's going to be chaotic. I think that's what our friend Joe Tier predicted. It's going to be a chaotic year. But I personally believe it's like I've always thought the Hapaboria thing was real since I was a little kid. I was like, yeah, it would be like awesome. It makes sense if you look at the way the continents even line up. And maybe even that 5 or 7 thing is about that. That's often something I've been thinking about lately. Are they just talking about the wheel of the, like I'm talking about like the Buddhist wheel of time? It's conceptual. It's like in yourself, but they're talking about like one that's probably at the North Pole, if we're really being honest, or Newfoundland, as I said in the group chat. So I don't know. I think they believe it. I don't know if I believe it. I mean, maybe. Sure, is it cool? Yeah, okay. I don't know. I think that this is a good moment maybe to return to like we need a lot of spiritual fortitude for the next few years, all of us. Myself maybe more than all of you, simply because I've been so chaotic, like outwardly. So I'm just saying that do whatever you need to do for the next year, because I just feel like it's going to be chaotic. But I think that, we have to be flexible. Like with what Matt said, we have to ride the dragon. I think that to get too stuck into Merkaba or Hekalo, is it a vehicle? Is it a mind palace? Well, it's both of those fucking things. It's both of those things at the same time. They're not even in opposition. So, let's perfect the vehicle and also perfect the mind palace at the same time. I think that's my words of wisdom for the day, and probably my only ones, simply because I don't follow them myself. But I do love you guys all in my own like crazy dry on way. I really do. Like honestly, the group saw me through so much shit. I just didn't know I could even like be like this. So, I am a loner. Like I'm a true loner. I'm not a misfit really. I'm just like more of a I've always done my own thing. And like for better or worse. But I think that having like a group dynamic is hard sometimes, but I think it also like draws me into being more at least at times thoughtful in my way that I am, and also just like what Solar brought up, like sort of like understanding like, yeah, I do have broader karmic implications when I interact. Yeah, they might be fleeting, facile, social media, parasocial implications, but this, as Matt said, it's our fucking black cube. Maybe we're amplifying our karma 100 times. Oh, fuck. So well, I'm not okay. Maybe not 100 times, but 7 times over. So we're Joe maxing, like for real. And so, yeah. So I think that rebirth for like the lodge is that going forward, it's a book club. It's like spaces like this, and we will continue on. And so I think this was a great Chokmah discussion, actually, because Chokmah is without potential if she does not have fire. Gevra, which I know is everybody's favorite, at least the boys. But Gevra cannot exist independently. It must exist in dialectical synthesis with its complement, which is Hesed. The ocean and the waters must be together. That's how it makes a lightning. Just saying. I think that's a mistake, but that's my opinion. So take it as you will. Okay. If anyone has any last thoughts, so this will be our weekly thing, Friday nights. I think it's like fun, it's cool. If you come, you come. If you don't, you don't. It's totally okay. It's like just a flexible space. We'll read the book. We'll talk about Kabbalah. We'll talk about magic. It'll kind of be like the synthesis of all the spaces that we've done before. Just maybe kind of like more of like a free flow, like a circle of people who are all like doing the work. And oh my God, BD, we have BD in the house. BD's episode will be dropped next week. We're really excited about it, on astral bodies, Neptune and Ketu, which is exactly what we talked about tonight. And the Neptune-Saturn conjunction, and the eclipses, and Ketu's role as a corrosive presence, socially, emotionally, guilty. Okay, so good night, you all. sorry to keep you. It's 11:11. We're gonna call it now. At least it's not for me. And yeah, good night, everybody, and good day to all of you in Asia. So talk to you soon.
See ya.